They say there are two kinds of people in this world: those who find themselves and those who create themselves. Are you looking for purpose or deciding it for yourself? Will you plunge waiting for someone to catch you, or will you jump and build your wings on the way down? Seek a path or carve a path. Wait for the future or build it. What is a school but a set of walls waiting for greatness? And who are you but someone destined to achieve it? Here, between the street and the jungle, against time and tide, we push and pull just like the currents. Our ocean of dreams will meet the odds ahead and rise above it all.
Off a day, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's WERI Advisory Council meeting. Before we do begin and before I do hand it over to Dr. Jensen for introduction and opening remarks, I do want to acknowledge the presence of some of our participants in today's meeting, including the Honorable Tello Chaitigui, Senator with the 35th Guam Legislature. Thank you for joining us today, Senator. Also, at the university leadership level, I'd like to welcome on one of our Board of Regents, Mr. Pete Diaz. Of course, our interim dean of the School of Engineering, Dr. Khadra Khanal. And I do also want to acknowledge the presence of some of our U.S. EPA friends, including Commander Elena Vaulu from American Samoa, who is a project manager with the U.S. EPA Region 9 Pacific Islands Office, as well as Captain Brian Bearden, Chief Engineer for Guam EPA. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. John Jensen and Mr. Aaron Sutton, who will open today's meeting.
Good morning and happy day, everybody. We're pleased to have all of you join us, and especially our distinguished guests and colleagues from AWWA and Guam EPA School of Engineering. And I'm pleased to have my colleague, Dr. Kasrapana on, who's former director of WERI and now the founding dean of the School of Engineering. He's going to have a presentation for us. So this is the third of 4 sessions in our what we're calling our WERI Advisory Conference. Since we've been doing it online, we met for Guam last Tuesday, CNMI last Thursday, and now we're meeting for FSM today, and then on Thursday we'll be wrapping up with a part 2 meeting for Guam. Most of you have been on and heard my introductory speech, so I'll keep it short. This is a combined event with American Waterworks Association, which was the inspiration for this venue. Their very successful meeting in August was the model that I discovered, and so enlisted our Global Learning and Engagement Center, who you met Amanda just now, will be facilitating this meeting for, and she runs all the bells and whistles, so that the rest of us just we only need to follow our cues from Amanda and Michelle, and they're going to record this meeting so that those who want to review it or share it with their friends, or somebody who can't attend wants to get in on it, they'll be able to access it via YouTube. We are going to, as we usually do at these meetings, review the work that's being done. You're going to hear from Dr. Lander on the work that's being done on rainfall and stream flow. And Maria Cottermeyer is going to give a presentation on the digital atlases of FSM, which has been an ongoing project now for years that Danko Tabarossi has undertook many years ago, back when Dr. Kay was director of WERI and launched that program. We are going to have a professional development presentation by AWWA, Ken Reckdahl, and then we'll have a facilitated discussion with the US EPA led by Commander Bearden from Guam EPA. So I'm going to invite my counterpart, Aaron Sutton, to say a few words of introduction, and then we'll launch into the program.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Again, it was nice that you invited us to AWWA to team up with these sessions. It's a privilege to be able to reach out to different island groups now that we get to have this session for the SFM. And we look forward to being able with this video conferencing to be able to do it more in the future. So I don't want to say too much too. I'm sure many people have heard our opening remarks, but a great benefit of this is being able to reach out, share knowledge, share experience between the islands, between the island groups, being able to save on expenses, save on time. So we'll take advantage of it where we can, how we can. Thanks, Dr. Jensen.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Okay, I'm going to take just a few minutes to share some information on WERI, who we are and what we do. Again, many of you have seen this, so I'll just to kind of speed through it and bring you up to date on what's new. Like I say, I first want to brag about the WERI team, like I always do. Next slide. Next slide. We're really fortunate to have a talented administrative staff that manages over 40 accounts for a total of about $2 million in grants and funding that supports our program and pays the salaries for our staff, our students, research associates that I'll be telling you a little bit more about. We have a research staff that runs our water lab. I'll show you a little bit about them on the next slide. And then our research faculty, there are 7 of us, and we cover the whole water cycle. You're going to hear about the front end of the water cycle from Mark Lander here in a few minutes. Or water that comes out of the sky, goes across the surface into the ground. We do water quality, wastewater, and from the front end of the cycle to the back end of the cycle, and all these guys' faces you see have a part of that. Next slide. Click on the next button. We're real proud of our water quality laboratory. These ladies do a fine job of supporting research as well as providing services to the whole economy. Keeps our work here on the island, circulates some money that would otherwise go off the island, providing a low-cost service for customers and clients around the island and the entire region. And they're one of the university's crown jewels in terms of service and quality of work. Next slide. Our graduate and undergraduate research assistants are students who are working on degrees or providing service to our laboratories while they're working on another degree. And these young people are the frontline troops of science. You can't do natural science, environmental science without somebody to collect the data, do the field work, and write it up. And we're real proud of these. In fact, next slide. Over the years, we've had our students win national awards, university awards, local awards, and they just really shine. We've got a lot of talent, and we keep attracting more talent. And I like to tell my colleagues the secret to success is to find talented students and take good care of them and just reward them for doing the work and stay out of their way. Next slide. So to support those students, we support the Graduate Environmental Science Program, which has graduated about 60 students since it was launched in 1997 when it graduated its first student. The WERI faculty is about 1/3 of the program faculty. We've graduated 2/3 of the students. And we've also taken a hand in launching the School of Engineering. It goes back to when my colleague Leroy Heitz, who's with us today, and Dr. K launched the pre-engineering program and ran it out of WERI for many years. And Dr. K led the committee with that President Underwood put together several years ago to pull together the School of Engineering, and is now the founding dean of that school that's going to graduate its first class this coming May. And we're real proud of the role that we've played in that. I'm going to tell you more about when we end up the scholarship that we've launched to honor Joe Rouse's legacy, who made some pivotal contributions to that school too. So you're going to hear from Dr. K about some of the initiative that the School of Engineering is taking with the University of Hawaii to launch a program that's likely going to include not only Guam, but FSM. And it's, I'll let Dr. K tell you the details. So next slide. So local research is an investment. These young people that come out of our program go to work in the local economy. We've got people working in local engineering firms, GWA, and we're here to pipeline them into the local economy and local education system. Next slide. We've got former students that are now on faculty at engineering departments and science departments around the country. And it just, we've had some of their students come back and do some work with us. I call them my grand students. And we just keep on getting better in terms of the talent that we attract and promote. So I got 1 minute to stay on schedule here. Let me fire through the next slide. In 25 words or less, next slide. Our mission is trustworthy and timely research, instruction, and advice to support scientifically informed development and effective management of the freshwater resources of Guam, CNMI, FSM. We're here today to talk about that. Next slide. We want to remain the acknowledged local and regional source of choice for scientific and technical advice on exploration, development, and management. We're nationally ranked and we want to stay there as an internationally recognized center of excellence for research in the things we do best. And to fulfill that vision, we maintain broad expertise in all the essential subdisciplines, as I mentioned, engineering, hydrology, and related earth sciences. We leverage our expertise with strategic partnerships and collaborations. Next slide. Our core values are reliable and honest science, consultative decision-making, and across-the-board teamwork, superb instruction, conscientious mentoring, earnest service to the community and university, and sincere partnerships with public and professional agencies. Last slide. I'd like to summarize by saying what we're not. We're environmental scientists, not environmentalists. We're not activists. We are not politically correct. We follow the data, not the funding. We tell our clients and partners the bad news along with the good news. We tell the truth even when it's not welcome. And we're team players and public servants. We're not prima donnas. We try to walk our talk. So I've run out the clock. I'm going to turn the turn the controls back over to Amanda. And I'll turn the podium to Dr. Lander, who is going to give us a presentation on lessons learned in 20 years of field measurements, rainfall, stream flow in the tropical rainforests of Pohnpei and Costa Rica. In fact, I'm going to give Dr. Lander my chair. You can see him in the background there. Wow. So we're still getting all the technology set up in our offices, and right now we're sharing my office. So.
He's invisible.
Yeah, sort of. Thanks so much, Dr. Jensen. While Dr. Lander is getting set up and while Michelle's setting up Dr. Lander's presentation, we're going to go ahead and play a quick video just introducing Dr. Lander for everyone.
I forgot my intro video. Oh, I forgot my collar shirt. Oh, crap. Maybe I can get really low.
Dr. Lander, the floor is yours.
You're muted.
Oh, I was muted. My grand entry was thwarted. Uh-oh, what happened now? Everyone, I can't see. I'm not on the screen. There I am. Yeah, I was going to say good morning, Kasale, Rananim. Then I said Yokwe, but that's Majuro. It's not part of FSM, but it's all part of Micronesia. But hey, I say Dr. K up there. Yeah, normally this time of year, we're on one of the islands. We're on Yap or Chuk or Kosrae or Pohnpei. Last year, we were on Kosrae, probably about the same time last year. So here I am talking to a computer. Anyway, I only see a couple of squares of faces here, but good morning, Mark Lander. Most people know me. I do enjoy getting out in the islands. Many times been to Pohnpei more, studying the rain in the rainforest there. But anyway, here's my talk. I only got 10 minutes, so I'll never make it. Just fly through the slides. Next slide. There's a typhoon I was in back in 2018. I went up to Saipan and actually was in that thing. Okay, next slide. I don't see anything. Anyone see a slide? Oh, here it comes. I don't know if that's I guess that is. One of the things, my rain gauge, next slide, there's a not allowed the highest mountain on Pohnpei. Yeah, here I am on Pohnpei, cooling off. I get too hot. Everyone, they walking up there, the local guides have no trouble, but I'm overheating and jumping every river along the way. There's the right-hand side, a beautiful dwarf pandanus rainforest up at the top. Next slide. I got to fly here because it's so short. The beautiful, the dwarf rainforest on the top of Nanaloud. You see the moss growing on the trees, beautiful streams. I suppose you could drink the water. Sometimes I do when I get too hot, but anyway, next slide. Pohnpei, I go to Pohnpei. Most of my projects have been on Pohnpei, hiking around in the mountains and the rainforest up there. Next slide. One in particular, there's a satellite view. Next slide. It has an action that'll go in the little, not allowed right there in the middle. Next slide. The mountain, almost 3,000 feet high. There it is, the rain gauge in the swamp. I went up with a crew with Conservation Society of Pohnpei and some of the local guides hiking up there. See the hunters camp down the bottom. You sleep in a cave overnight if you want to make it a 2-day trip. I put the rain gauge in the swamp and we got 3 years of rainfall readings up there. Then a big landslide occurred, I think in 2004. You see the huge landslide there. Another one of the hazards out there. Next slide. There I am again, putting a rain gauge in the swamp. That's a lake. That's like a crater, like Diamond Head in Hawaii. There's a rim and there's a lake in the middle, but the lake kind of grew over with a mat of grass. If you jump up and down, everybody shakes. And when we put a post to make the rain gauge, it went down and sank. So we tell people, don't jump too hard or you're going in. But anyway, I enjoy it. It's fun to go up there. It's a long hike. It's 3,000 foot elevation almost. And it's almost all day up and back. Okay, next slide. I got more stuff than I'm ever going to get to. There's the data from non-allowed. There's the 1 minute rainfall. I put a rain gauge. It can get anything that has 1 second rainfall, but one of the heaviest rains there in 2004, it had 0.15 inches in 1 minute. So we got a lot of good data and we established the annual. Next slide. A wet place indeed. During the 2003 to 2006 project, we put rain gauges in the red locations. And the yellow locations are standard ones that we got the data from to compare. There's our measurement, the 3-year mean of the annual rainfall. Not a lot, 323 inches of rain. I was hoping to beat Hawaii. I was trying to beat the Kauai, the Waialeale rain gauge. It gets 460 inches of rain a year. I was sure we might do it in Pohnpei, but we didn't make it, but we still got a lot of rain. That's a lot of rain in the middle there. Look how it's half. The airport 155, one of the driest places. But what's more interesting, we got these rain readings. Now, next slide. We compared it to a computer simulation that these guys out of Oregon State University did. And it matched very well, especially the non-allowed rain. They simulated it would get 320 inches of rain. And by coincidence or magic or something, we exactly reproduced that. So the PRISM, their method, their algorithm to do this worked quite well for Pohnpei, establishing the high ground gets more. That's not true everywhere. In Guam, it's not quite true. You don't get, just because you're higher up doesn't mean you get more rain. But also Pohnpei has a standard one. You get more rain on the west side. When the winds are easterly, the east is dry and the showers drift off to the west and keep the west side, like Palakir, wetter. So a lot of different things. What's that? Only 5 minutes to go and about an hour's worth of slides. Okay, next slide. I'll just fly through them. Everyone kind of, there I am again. I don't know how that slide came up again on the swamp. Next slide. Putting the rain gauge on Pohnpei. Oh, okay, next slide. Uh-oh. Yeah, I must have put this duplicated. Next slide. Yeah, how did these get twice? All right, typhoons. Everybody remembers 2015. Extremely busy year of typhoons because it was El Nino, epic El Nino. Look at all those typhoons starting out around Madro, Kwajalein, Pohnpei, Kosrae. Chuuk, of course, got hit. Was it Mitag that year? I forget which one it was, but it went across that, got Yap. Guam got Guam, Saipan. Just look at, we were a nexus of tracks. Busy, busy, busy year. Next slide. Now this year, what? Look at the difference. Wow, not a single one. This year, extremely quiet, night and day. It's not El Nino. In fact, it's La Nina on steroid. Well, even though the Atlantic is somehow coming up, coughing up record numbers of storms, we lost ours. They're gone. Maybe they took ours. Next. Some more years, some other years, 2015, El Nino, post El Nino, 2016, then 2017, a kind of a weakish El Nino, La Nina rather, 2018 weak El Nino, 2019 post El Nino, and 2020, now we're La Nina on steroids. Look, and I showed slide, next slide. I'm gonna run out of time. I haven't even gotten to 5. Sea level, everyone's worried about. Here's a chart I like to show from Guam with typhoons come by. And the normal typhoon waves get to the yellow line, about a 20-foot inundation level. The big ones like WERI back in 91 wash off and wipe everything out up to 40 feet. So any people that come out and try to establish where the sea inundation and so forth, this is a kind of in the field kind of data we go out and get. Anyway, next slide. This isn't Micronesia, but it's just an example. We're all under, here's a rainfall. Pacific. I did my own climate assessment. Next slide. I'll just fly through it. You can sort of read it as it goes. Oh, this is a sea level. For climate assessment, you got sea level, rainfall, typhoon distribution, and temperature. Sea level, we all do the same thing. Here's the sea level for Guam. I have a unique take on it. The sea level has had has a step function. It stayed about the same all the way from 1948 to 97. It jumped up and it stayed high since then. You see the red and the green are two separate sea level behaviors here. Nothing to do with climate change yet. Next slide. The high sea level in recent years because the trade winds got stronger. Micronesia, Western Pacific, we lead the world in sea level going up. But the reason why, it exactly matches the trade winds. The red and the green there with the blue behind it. The blue behind that red and green is the trade winds that force the sea level here. And it almost is one for one. The trade winds are the reason for our sea level behavior. Next slide, not ice melting or polar bears, fat polar bears jumping in the water. There's the projections, you get everything under the sun. The standard 1 meter by 2100 is the green line. The draft Perker report extrapolated the current trend on the red line, and I kind of manipulate. I got mine about in the black line, but anyway, purple line is an extreme. Next slide. I can't go into this as much as I would like to, but rainfall. 1 minute. Never mind. Rainfall. Fly through it. Next slide. Pohnpei. Next slide. There. Good. We have all kinds of data. Next slide. Here's an example, extremes and long-term trend. On Pohnpei, we go in the forest a lot, and the people were complaining that their stream, especially the middle-aged to older folks that remember the good old days, is that our streams just don't flow like they used to. Whether it's the sakau growing or the climate change, well, there actually has been a change in rainfall. You see the blue, this rainfall chart shows there's been a decline. It's been getting drier, except for the very recent years. They had a big, big year in 2018. An end of that chart, the dots pop back up. Next slide. I'm going to run the clock out here. Here's some wet thresholds, months greater than 25 and 30, and dry thresholds, months less than 6 on Pohnpei. Anyway, I can't go view analysis. That next slide. Trend of heavy rain, Pohnpei greater than 30. Next slide. Climate change, next slide. I want to get only the one climate change thing. Nice. 2015, we all remember that busy typhoon year. There's a pattern to Bavi in March and a twin cyclone in the Southern Hemisphere. Next slide. And also 2015 Sodalor and Cyclone 01P, the year of twins. Almost every northern one had a southern twin like this. Next slide. El Nino differences in typhoons is profound, huge. We're in the lower left now. We're in the lower left 2020, as you could use this chart to say what we're going to do in the next 3 to 5. Oh, my bell rang. I want to go one more slide if I find my climate change one. Next slide. That's it. I'll stop here, but look at this slide. This is an incredible slide. This is the computer simulation of typhoons in 100 years in a warmer world. You notice the top one, that's the distribution. Normally that we get a certain number. And in 100 years, the lower chart there shows that gets cut in half. We lose half. We lose 50% of our typhoons. A loss of 50%. If we used to get greater than 4 per certain threshold, we only will get 2 passing us by every year. We won't lose them all, but model simulations are quite consistent in showing Western Pacific, while we lead the world in sea level rise, we lead the world in typhoon reduction. You won't hear that anywhere except here, and the models if you want to go dig them up. But it's, in fact, some of the reduction is so extreme that even if they get more intense, we'll just lose so many that the yearly statistics of even intense ones will go down. And that's a good message. Not everything about climate change is doom and gloom. Okay, that's it. I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lander. Before we move on, I do want to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Kim Canto, the Dean of the College of Micronesia FSM. Dean Canto, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next presentation, Digital Atlases of FSM.
Hi, thank you very much, Amanda. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Miss Maria, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Mogethin Rananim Kasalelia in Lenwa, everyone. I'm very excited and honored to present the Digital Atlas of Micronesia today. The project has been in the making for many years, as Dr. Jensen mentioned, and it's finally online. Unfortunately, the editor of the project and director of IVI, Dr. Danko Taburosi, can't join us today, so he asked me to present for him as the co-editor of the project. Many of you know me already, but for those of who you don't, my background is in GIS, so mapping and spatial analysis is my background. And I've been working with the University of Guam and also especially WERI for many years, and also been assisting IRI for many years. And today I'm representing IRI. Briefly about the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, and then I'm going to do a live demo of the atlas. Whoop, that was too fast. So the source of the atlas is really a source of geospatial information for the Federated States of Micronesia, and it can be found online at islandatlas.org. And so the atlas was really created by 4 implementing and funding partners. One is IRI, Island Research and Education Initiative. It's a nonprofit based in Pohnpei since 2009. And IRI was responsible for the project implementation and the GIS development and the whole website development. WERI did the project initiation, oversight, management, evaluation, and promotion. And WERI was really crucial in securing the core funding, which came from USGS 104B program. And so in 2016, it started with Pompey, the following year Kushrai, then Yap and Chuk. And we had several professors, including Dr. Jensen and Dr. Kay from WERI help us with the project. And then, yeah, the FSM government recognized the value of the project that WERI started, and I really want to thank Snyder Bisa here. He was a big supporter, and we were able to leverage additional funding. And so the additional funding came from the FSM Department of Environment, Climate Change, and Emergency Management. And so with that additional funding, we were really able to improve the atlas for the national government needs and bring it to a whole new level. And so that allowed us new data development, but interactive mapping, and also a new website. And of course, this project would not have been possible with our additional partners. We had some partners where we had data sharing agreements with, and so the major partners are USDA and NRCS, Yap State R&D, Pompey State DOE, Chuk State EPA, then the College of Micronesia, and also the Pacific Disaster Center, which is based in Hawaii. And then we had a lot more local support, different partners who provided more information, feedback, and just general support. And so these include other local government organizations, as well as nonprofit organizations, and also some US federal agencies like different NOAA branches. So yeah, big thank you to all of our partners here. And so the main purpose of this atlas is really a one-stop shop for maps and geospatial information for the FSM. And so it's a support tool. It allows for sustainable development, effective management of natural resources, as well as infrastructure, emergency response, research, education. It can be used for teaching. It's a great teaching tool for general awareness, but also for businesses. So it's a wide variety of users. And very important, it's not just for GIS users, it's also for non-GIS users. So anybody can really use this information. And so the website is made up of 3 parts. First, we have the GIS layers that can be found in the data depository. And they really are the fundamental building block. So everything else is built on the GIS layers. So once we had all the GIS layers, we were able to develop static maps, which can be found in the map gallery, and also dynamic maps for the interactive map. So all of this together are the 3 building blocks for the website. And so to the data sources and processing, there are really 3 different types. The first is existing data with minor modification. So our initial task, as the project was originally implemented by WERI, was to inventory and acquire existing data layers, organize them, process them, and incorporate them into the atlas. So this is what essentially was done for the atlas predecessor, the Natural Resources Atlas of Guam, who some of you might be familiar with. It's hydroguam.net. And in the FSM, however, the inventorying and organizing existing data was more difficult to spread out geography, more islands and stakeholders, but also fewer data. And over the years, we pursued this project's original goal and queried all data holding entities in all 4 FSM states and acquired a few dozen geospatial layers. However, so before any of the acquired data are incorporated into the atlas, the layers are processed to ensure consistency and compatibility throughout the repository. And so the processing steps generally include, but are not limited to, locating the most up-to-date and complete layers, extracting data sets for specific islands, verifying and correcting projection, aligning features to better match imagery and Atlas original base layers, performing additional edits and updates, and checking topology, fixing errors, and adding metadata. So even though we might have gotten data from another agency or from it still had to go through a lot of these processing steps. The next one is existing data where we had to ended up doing major modifications on. So the nature of what was available in the FSM rendered original goals insufficient, and we had to expand the scope as the project as we went along. And the main reason was the quality of existing data was very deficient in all sorts of ways. So questionable information, unknown source, unknown projection, incomplete or lack of metadata, where we just didn't know, how the data came about, usable spatial information with no attributes, or good attributes but questionable spatial information, or both vectors and attribute information was usable, but they were disjointed in separate files. And there are many other cases, just to give an idea of what we were going through in the process. And with ESAM's buy-in in 2020, we were able to make major modifications to a lot of the data sets, especially the infrastructure layers. And this is why the layers served in the atlas are much better than any other file versions available elsewhere. And important also to point out that all the data has metadata attached to it. And metadata is the data about data. So it tells you, it describes the data, what kind of data set you have, who created it, when it was created, and how it was created. And many more, much more information. And so we have the existing data with minor modifications, existing data with major modifications, and the third type of data is our new layers created specifically for this atlas. And so the WERI initiated project did not envision improving or creating new data. We found that it was necessary and possible through leveraging additional support from the FSM government. And very often a particular layer type was available for one state, but not the others. And so we endeavored to fill the data gaps by creating analogous layers for all states. As part of the work on creating such missing layers, I relocated many previously unrecognized sources, including print and digital publications and unpublished reports from which we created a GS layer. Example is, for example, old geology maps that we found and digitized. Another example of a new layer we created portray data collected as part of the 2010 FSM census of population and housing. And we even located and digitized maps from a number of historical documents and master's and PhD theses and produced a wide range of layers representing cultural and historical heritage of the FSM. And so the atlas includes nearly 500 static maps, about 400 GS layers, so about 100 layers for each of the islands, Yapchu, Pohnpei, and Kusrai, and over 100 visualizations from the 2010 FSM census. And so each of the layer is available for download in multiple formats for maximum versatility. And so overall, when you see here, it's like shapefiles, the GS layers, KML is for Google Earth, JPEG are different, JPEG, PNG, and so forth are the map formats that are available. And so overall, when you count the 400 GS layers, and then you have like, actually there's another one, the metadata file is missing here. So 8 or 9 different file formats, you have over 3,000 downloadable files. Okay, I just want to say this again. Over 3,000 downloadable files. So that's a lot of data that is available for download on this atlas. And to the main menu, we have the island module. So you can browse by island and theme. So you have Yap State, and main island and neighboring islands, Chuk State, Chuk Lagoon and the outer islands, Pohnpei State, so Pohnpei Main and the outer islands, and Kusrai, which doesn't have any outer islands. Then there's also the interactive map where you can create your custom maps. You can zoom in and zoom out, measure, change the transparency, so you can change the look of the data. You can turn layers on and off, and you can also export it. Next is the data repository. So you can search and download the actual GIS files. And last, the map gallery, where you can browse pre-designed, so static maps. So if you don't want to do any work, you just want to have some pretty maps you want to include in your report, you can just go to the map gallery. And then, of course, there's supporting materials, the acknowledgement data sources, disclaimer, etc. And so the modules that are completed so far are Yap proper, Chuk Lagoon, Pohnpei, and Kusrai. And so the next step is to work on the outer islands. And let's explore the atlas a little bit. I'm going to stop sharing and start again. Let's see. Okay, can you see the website? Can I get a
Hi,
thumbs
Miss
up?
Maria. We can see it.
Okay, great. So this is the landing page. So as I mentioned, there's a vast amount of information in there, but we try to keep it as simple as possible. And where I just mentioned the different menu items, you can see them on top here. And so when you come here, you can scroll down, and then you have the different islands available. You have Yap, Chuk Lagoon, Pohnpei, and this Kusrai. And then a little bit more information. And then here's another way you can access the different modules. More information. And here also some pretty pictures of the different islands. And this is really a placeholder for future community profiles. And then here you can see the credits and also acknowledgements and data sources. So let's start with, let's go into Yap proper. So right now you can see a link is there, but it's not available yet. So once you get to a module, and they all look the same on top, like you have the same menu items. So you can see here you have land, you have reefs, next is water, and they're always accompanied by very pretty pictures. Vegetation, population, infrastructure, conservation, and culture. So they're grouped into the different themes. So if we go, for example, to vegetation. Okay, so here you have the different sub-themes. So in this case, we have vegetation from 1975, and then also 2005, these two layers. And so here you see the map, and then you have a little write-up, and then you have these different options. So you can just view the map. So when you click that, you see the same thing what you see here, just larger in our own browser window. Then when you go to view the layers, let's see, I'll just open. Then you can actually investigate or browse the actual layers and find more information. So again, here you have information about the layer. You can go to the legend. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, and can, if you want to know what a certain area, what kind of vegetation there is, you just click on it, and then you get more information on that. And then here. Let's go back again. Okay, so these are the few layers, and you can also view the metadata. Here it describes what I mentioned before, a little bit about the data set, the credits. In this case, we had an available data set, but we slightly modified it. So we shifted it to better overlay the current or the other base layers we have. And then you also have the citation information, etc. And then down here, if you want to go to one of the other islands, you can just click here. Also go back to island modules to bring you back to the landing page. If you go to Chuk, let's explore Chuk. And one of my favorites is, let's see, population, municipalities. Let's go. This is a good example of a layer that really we created from scratch. And it's not just shows the municipalities, it also shows the region it belongs to and also the different names. So again, here we have this is Chuk, the different municipalities. And if you click on it, you have, it's a high island, the official name is Venu, then the old name, and also the name in Chukis. So this layer had, and oh, sorry, here's also the region and sub-region it belongs to. So this layer went over many, many revisions, and yeah, a lot of people reviewed it to make sure that we have the right spelling and all the right information. So a lot of work went into this. Another interesting layer, for example, is the population by age and sex. So when you click on that, we get a lot of information from the census data. Again, here's a little bit write-up about the data in general. You can see the legend. And then when you zoom in here, again, you just click on the island you're interested in. So the total population of Weno is over 13,000. And then if you just want to look at the population of males, you also have it broken down into the different age groups. And if you're not sure what this means, you can also go to the metadata that will explain more about the data. And then when you scroll down, you also have like females. And then besides the information in the table, it's sometimes hard to comprehend, like look at all the numbers and just, you know, what do they all mean? But they also represented in really nice graphs. So when you look at this here, you can again click on it and see what this age group is. So 15 to 19-year-old females and also males. So they're both pretty high. I don't know, might have to do something with schools that a lot of high schoolers go to Weno for school. I might be wrong, I don't know. But it's just an example of the information you can receive from here. Let's go back. Oops, population. Okay, one more I just want to show you are the school enrollment. Okay. Again, you can click on the layer and find all the information. The source is the 2010 census and also IRI. And when you scroll down, you can get additional graphs to that show the data in different format. So here, for example, you have high school, you scroll over college, elementary school. So there's a lot of information that if you just have it in like a table form, it's really hard to comprehend. But if you look at these graphics, they really tell a story. Okay. So I showed you the view map. It's basically, again, the static map, the few layers where you can actually explore the layers, find out more about what is in the actual data set, view the metadata, and then at the bottom line, you can download the data. So if you go over it, you can select the different formats, download the different data, which is the actual GIS data, and download the overlay, which are the maps that you can actually bring into GIS and they overlay with all the other data. Next, I'm just going to jump over to data depository to show that briefly. So here you have all the 4 different islands, so you can select one. Let's select Pompeii, and then you can see all these layers here. And let's see. Actually, the one Dr. Lander showed, I don't know if you remember the rainfall data set, the PRISM data set, we have it in there too. So here it's precipitation, and no, that's a different one. I can't find it right now, but it is also included in the atlas. And then the map gallery, you can also select again the 4 different islands, and then you have all the maps that are available for that island available here. So you can just look at pretty maps, and if you want, download them. Let's see, Pompeii. So there's really, a lot of information contained in this atlas. Let's see. Yeah, I can't find it now. And oh no, here, see, average annual rainfall. That's the data set that, Dr. Lander showed earlier. And then to the interactive map, again, you can select what island you want, and then you come to the interactive. Okay, here. Here just preloaded Kushrai. And many of you are familiar with Google Earth, so it's a little bit similar. You have the different, the legend here with the different layers you can turn on and off. And then here you have an image. You can also change that if you want, but let's zoom into Lelu Island. So here you have a lot of options. And of course, I can't go into all of the options, but I just want to show you the some of the potential of this atlas. So here you can also use OpenStreetMap as a base layer, and here we just have our digital atlas. And then when we go back to the layers, for example, we're interested in culture. Let's look at the Lelu ruins. They're just floating around here, so maybe it's good if we turn on some land. Let's turn, let's see, sorry. Here we can turn on the shoreline. If you want to have, let's say maybe infrastructure, building footprints. So these are the modern building footprints. We can also change the transparency here. What other, oh, maybe let's do the, add the roads to it. And maybe a hill shade. And if you want, there are also reefs available here. So again, you see that these main layers correspond also to the menu items that you saw earlier. And so here reefs, we can, for example, turn on the coral reefs. So now you have a new map. And this is really a great teaching tool. You can really customize the map you want to make and show it to your students or include it in the technical report or for different planning. Yeah, as I mentioned, for infrastructure planning or environmental resources, we have conservation areas. So there's a lot of information, and I encourage you to just, yeah, explore yourself. And so again, here, it's also the measurement tool. You can, if you want to, let's say, know how long the island is, you just go here and pang, 1.45 kilometers. And then you can do the same thing, similar with a polygon. See how big the polygon is. So it's really powerful. Then again, if you just want to know generally about you in Kushrai, and also you can print it. So if you print it, it creates a new file. You can specify what kind of file you want, if you want a JPEG, PDF, whatever suits you, and include that in your report. And then, yeah, just here we have the site map available. This is what I showed earlier. So yeah, the different island modules, interactive map, data depository, and gallery. So again, the Atlas is really for a wide variety of users, the GIS users, and then the non-GIS users, people that just want to download like ready-made simple maps. You can also download just a map of rivers, for example, and then have students write in the names, or yeah, there's a lot of endless possibilities. Yeah, in this atlas. So I hope you see the value and potential of this, and please let us know if you have any questions or suggestions. We are always open for improvement. And yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, are there any questions?
Very good job. You know, Maria, excellent job. Boy,
Thank you.
you have to use it for the high school student, you know, to like other one for Guam. And then the other island, always I say Saipan needs to do something like this.
Yeah.
It's excellent job. Boy. I'm gonna use, I will talk to you later.
Yeah. Yes, actually, that's one of the plans is to also update the Guam one again, because that's been several years. And then maybe if Saipan is interested, there would be another, like create a, include all of the Mariana Islands and expand it to Marshall Islands. And so there's a lot of, yeah. things that can be done. And of course, there's always room for improvement. And also the layers, we updated a lot of layers, but there's still, I mean, there was no way that we can update everything. It's just that the scope is just, yeah, too big. So it's really a living project. And we also intend to keep updating it. And if there any new data is available, that we can include it in the atlas. And it's really something, a resource to be used. And so if there's anything that, you know, that we can improve, like, please let us know. Like, it's not something that we built to sit in the shelf. And yeah, and it's really nice. Like, I know how many people are using HydroGuam, and so I hope that as many people or even more will use the Atlas of Micronesia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thanks so much, Ms. Maria. At this time, before we hand it over to Dr. Copperspada, our Dean of the School of Engineering, we will do a short introduction as Michelle sets up the presentation.
Okay. Whose turn is it? Oh, I can hear. Very nice. Thanks. First of all, I'm gonna congratulate to John Jensen. Really excellent. I mean, boy, you are, the WERI is #1. I just miss it and I love it always. And I want to thanks to the senator for coming and listening to this, and also to FSM, the members. Boy, I'm missing all those, you know, going to all the islands and this. So gonna be, you know, nice they are here. I want to talk about the, and also my good friend Leroy Heights is here. Okay, this proposal, we worked with the other university, with the 6 other universities, and then we came up with the resilience through the socially considered engineering for underserved population. We call it a close up or rise up. Rise up, we're gonna move it up. So this pre-proposal was submitted to NSF on October 2nd. And the main proposal is due May 7. It's gonna be 20 pages, gonna be. And then funding, I hope, we cross the finger, funding gonna happen in summer 2021. And okay, next slide. And then this, as I said, you know, 6 universities, University of Hawaii, Civil Engineering Department, University of Guam, we are involved, and Florida, Alaska, and also Puerto Rico, and the Rice University. Okay. And so this is the, we call it the core institute. The core institute require for to be a core institute, you have to have 3 faculty officials, 3 faculty and 1 coordinator, and also submit the pre-proposal. It all is done. So next slide, please. When we, this is talking about the big amount, you know, this is going to be for 5 years is $15 million. And then for the next 5 years, it will be probably will be extended, it's going to be 50 million more. So we're talking about, you know, about lots of money, $100 million. So the core coordinator for Guam, I'm the coordinator, and then I have Dr. Deborah Carrera. I don't know if she's here. She's a social scientist, and she's gonna take care of the financial things and how to get to the community. And I have another one is the from WERI, Chris, is the scientist in climate change. And also Mark Lander is included in this project too. And we have Mark Lander and so also John Jensen. And then the Dr. Patil from Civil Engineering Department is included. And he's an expert in landslide and soil and that kind of stuff. And also I have some, if I need help, I can get every other, like we have a structural engineer, we can use Dr. Jeffrey Cheng, and also, Rio is okay. And then I have my friend, from advisory council, Ken Rector and all those people. So next slide, please. Okay, okay. The reason, the purpose, the vision is the next 100 years is going to be dramatic changes in a community throughout the world. And according to world data, 10% of population, they live close to the ocean, or they live in a place that they are 10 meters above the sea level. And then when we're talking about the sea level rise, climate change, there are many other hazards that's going to happen, like typhoon, rainfall, and so and so. So the people the community that they are close in that area, the capacity, adaptive capacity of this group is unknown. The reason is because the lack of probably lack of financial and economic resources, or they are marginal in decision maker for the community, or language, distance, then education, all this, and we call it the underserved community. And the goal of this project is to raise it up, to adapt these people or underserved to the disaster that's gonna, or the hazard that's gonna happen. And for that reason, they choose like in the area that is coastal area. This is the FSM, is the U.S. Area, U.S. community. Also, it emphasizes in territories and Guam, FSM, everywhere, and that's the whole idea. So the purpose is to raise up, adapt the community to the disaster. So for these things, we choose the bedside. We call it the bedside. Bedside means the area we're gonna do our test first. It means we're gonna have this group that I have, and also in this group I'm gonna have a place for graduate students, probably from WERI, and also undergraduate engineering students and all this. And this is gonna go to the community for the place that we choose at the bedside. The bedside for Guam, we choose it Umatic area, south. And so they're gonna go, this group, the first step is to go talk to, to look at the financial status of this group, look at any kind of culture, who is in charge of this. So at the end, we're gonna, all this core center, they're gonna report to the report from 6 core center. And then from these things, we're gonna come up with a structure or the engineering solution or engineering construction, these things that will be adapted to this area and be adapted for the people, they can understand it. We're gonna have provide education, workforce development, and all these things for move them up, adapt this community. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right. And then for these things, and I look at the, somebody gonna ask me, okay, what is the cost gonna be? What is the, because every core, there are 6 places. We have to, next step is we have to tell them how much gonna cost. And I did the calculation. I didn't put it there, but I came up with a 1,700,000 is for Guam. And this is for next step. And this is include to use the 3 graduate students, pay them full, and the 6 undergraduate students and all the people who are involved. Deborah, Chris, and then Mark and Patil and all this group. And then also I'm gonna use the consultant. One of them is Maria Codenmeyer, really excellent. This things that this slide stuff show up. This is that's gonna help us a lot, and we need that things and we use for the Guam. And also we can put some money to fund extra work, And then I put the consultant list of this. So I add them up, it can increase. I mean, I have a report, it's 1.1 million, 0.75, but I can increase it to $2 million because the 50 million gonna be, see how much we get. And then for that reason, with the Mark, we went to come up with just the idea. We went to 2 areas. We found we had the flooding problem. Next slide, please. Okay. For example, we went to the bridge in Imatic, Ricky Bridge. And this one, this is before the storm. And then another picture is after a storm. And then the big flooding happens in that area. Next one, please. Next slide. Okay. For example, here, this area that you see here is after flood. But when the flood came, this area is about 9 feet, like 9 feet above the level of the average level. But the flood will cause increase that thing to get to 10 feet. And then when you got to 10 feet, all the houses here, this area got flooded, except one housing, this one here, because he himself add 1 foot to the wall. So that one foot stopped the flooding his house. And when we talked to him, he mentioned that he needs to talk, we need to bring it up to the governor, we need to bring it these things. And this is like a typical, kind of the purpose of this project is to look at how you can come up with some help. This is, and this is and then it doesn't mean that they will do the finance, what they can help for financing. Not they put this themselves, but they can help for federal and other unfederal agencies, so we can help to kind of come up with a solution. So at the end of this project, when we report, we're gonna come up with a structure, or we can come up with the things that we can adapt for the problems they have in the next 10 years, next 20 years. And then that will be accepted by the community. And then we're gonna train, provide education, training, and all this, and workforce for the community. Next slide, please. Another one is the flooding. This is a Mark, I think he took this picture in one of the streets. And this is in Hawaii or everything, they have, they call it the warning signal. It means when the flood gonna happen, when the water gets to some level, they can start to make a noise if a community is gonna be flooded. And this one, we don't have it in Guam. So Mark Lander idea was, we can work with the weather service, with the USGS, and we can install this in every river, along the river. And these are just example projects. So we're looking around. So, this project is, we're gonna submit by May 7th, the project proposal, and we have a good chance. We already talked to people in NSF, and they really like this area, this Western Pacific. And then the first, we decided to choose our bedside in Ponape, but the other people, I liked, my favor was to do it in Ponape, but they were saying, you know, the traveling is hard, these things. So we come up with choose the bedside in Humatic Village as the thing. So, but we see how we go. And really this WERI can help a lot. I mean, this is, Maria presentation was excellent. This is that we need to look at all the level of the, you know, who community, population, what level they are. And this is our next step. Thank you very much. And I want to say thanks to all the FSM members, thanks to the senators. Oh, by the way, we have now at the School of Engineering 230 students. And we have 16 of these going to be getting the bachelor degree, BS degree, civil engineering in 2021 in a spring semester, in May 21. And then also thanks to everybody. And then we're gonna have, we have about 7 faculty now, and really they are all busy. So thanks to everybody. And I will talk about these things tomorrow, I think, in a or Thursday or 29 presentation. More update on engineering school. But very good job. WERI is excellent. Thanks. Yeah. And thanks to everybody. Thanks especially. Another one is Vanji. Vanji Luhan was another person that really he started. The first funding for developing the atlas for Guam was Vanji Luhan. And thanks to him. And also, it's good that I was looking to see Kent, but it's good to see Aaron from AWA. Very good. Thank you very much. And thanks, John. All right. That's it, John. I think my time is over. And you have a good people. I'd like to thank to Amanda and Michelle. They are really good. You are lucky you have 2 good students. Those are wonderful. And oh, Ken, I see Ken there. And Vanji there. Oh, good people. Very good people. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patrapana. We appreciate those kind words and great presentation, and we look forward to your presentation tomorrow as well. At this time, we're going to go ahead and head in to the next item on our agenda, which is the break. So at this time, we encourage you to walk around, stretch out a little, use the restroom, take care of all the little things you'd like to do during the break. The break is 10 minutes. For those of you who will be sticking around, we'll also be playing the WERI lab, water quality lab video that we unveiled on the first day. With that said, we'll go ahead and share that video and enjoy your 10-minute break, and we'll see you all.
Hello, my name is Barry Kim. I'm the WERI faculty member and serve as the coordinator of WERI Water Quality Analysis Laboratory. In 1990, the WERI lab was established to assist water quality research. But as demand for water quality analysis increased in the local community, the WERI lab has offered commercial services since 2001. WERI lab is the only water quality analysis lab on Guam, so we track its needs, as well as keep enhancing analysis services. This video introduces what we do, how we collaborate with the local community, and what we have planned to expand the lab services. Enjoy watching this video.
The Water and Environmental Research Institute of the Western Pacific, also known as WERI, was established at the University of Guam in May 1975. The role of the institute is to facilitate and conduct high-quality research that addresses water problems and water-related phenomena, train students, teachers, and future water resource professionals, and disseminate research results to the community at large. Consistent with the regional role of the university, the institute devotes part of its program effort to Western Pacific Islands other than Guam. It is the only research center of its type in this geographic area and endeavors to respond to the unique conditions that exist here. The institute draws from the varied expertise of its research faculty members, University of Guam faculty, research affiliates from other universities, and local professionals. In 1980, the WERI Water Quality Analysis Lab, also known as the WERI Lab, was established to assist WERI researchers in water pollutant analysis.
My name is Jennifer Cruz, and I'm the laboratory manager of the Water Quality Lab.
My name is Crispina Herrera Tagudin, Lab Tech 3. I started at WERI December 1985.
My name is Mallory Duegius, and I am the chemist at the WERI Water Quality Laboratory. My name is Lourdes Mofness. I'm a graduate student in the ED program, but I'm also a research assistant too over at the WERI Lab.
The Water Quality Laboratory was first established in 1980 in House 28 of the Dean Circle, and it moved to the current WERI building in 1990. The laboratory was established to support research for water quality analysis. But in 2000, the lab was certified for the testing of total coliforms and E. coli, as well as lead by Guam EPA. This was to support the lead and copper rule that US EPA had regulated. Since then, no other testing parameters were certified until we hired a chemist in 2016, where now we have the manpower to offer more services as far as certified testing. In 2017, we added certification for the heterotrophic bacteria analysis. This was requested by many of the food establishments who are serving the military bases. And the same year, we added nitrite and nitrates in our certification. The last certification that we obtained was in 2018, which is for copper testing.
I conduct instrumentation analysis as well as conduct microbiological, organic, and inorganic analysis.
I have to go out in the field and collect samples from all the construction sites. New buildings, new residential areas. I have to go out and collect samples for lead and bacterial tests.
Part of my duties is helping making reagents and standards, and also helping analyze the samples we get. So that includes metals analysis and nutrients analysis, in addition to bacteria analysis for the water samples.
Some of the instruments we have in the laboratory are an atomic absorption spectrometer, which is used for lead testing in other metals. And then we also have the flow injection analyzer that we use to analyze nutrients in water, such as nitrates, ammonia, and phosphates. We also have a gas chromatograph, which is set up for the PCB analysis for research purposes. And of course, we have the standard lab equipment, such as the pH meter and meters. In addition to the total coliforms, E. coli, and heterotrophic bacteria, we also analyze enterococcus bacteria, which is used to monitor surface water or recreational waters on Guam. Our customer base consists of construction companies and consulting companies, but we also have food, airlines, and other government agencies. We also serve companies and other organizations within the region, such as CNMI and FSM.
WERI officially became the first regional water resources research institute in the WRRI program by extending its mission to the Federated States of Micronesia, or FSM, in 1991, and to the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, or CNMI, in 1997. The designation has opened a broad new spectrum of research and service opportunities for the University of Guam.
Out of the 54 research institutes in the country, we are one of only 2 that have a water quality laboratory. That's one of the reasons that we are highly rated. In fact, we're one of only 12 institutes that received the top rating of outstanding in the last 5-year review. We've been consistently in the top rated category for the last 25 years.
WERI Lab has really been developed over the years to support academic purposes such as research and student learning. And as more demand for research and study has come to the University of Guam, we've seen investments in the lab increasing. And those investments are tangible investments like equipment and facility and supplies, materials. But it also has brought us expertise. We've been able to hire lots of folks into the lab, those with specialized training in lab services as lab technicians. And we have our academic faculty who, through their research projects, utilize the lab and the resources in it. The community, they may not see that directly right away. We do have a number of businesses who are familiar with the lab and do work closely with the lab when they need tests of water quality done.
With an expanded lab, that includes an expansion of resources, and that's significant to me because as a student, I find it important that resources are available to help educate me and further my experience as a lab and research assistant. So most of all, I think it's significant to the students at UOG in addition to the people of Guam. The expansion of the laboratory would help create some positions for newly graduates who are looking into environmental compliance, who are interested in laboratory analysis, and open up some positions for undergraduate internships.
It has grown from just supporting research to offering services to the community of Guam and the region. And it still has a lot more potential to grow and benefit more students for internships and also for the local companies who need to send samples off island.
The government is a beneficiary of this in its public services, the public assurance of water quality and water safety, and working with GWA on some of those water quality tests. With the future design plans for a new building for WERI, the lab space will greatly increase, and thereby we'll have the room for that equipment, and we'll also have room for more personnel.
UOG and the whole island are really fortunate to have an asset like our water quality laboratory. Besides supporting research and providing a low-cost, readily accessible service to our clients and customers on the island, it leverages our local talent by providing an opportunity for students to get hands-on experience where they'd never be able to do it otherwise without going off island for it. I'm excited to see it expanding and looking forward to continuing the service that we provide to the island and to the students that train in it. It's one of UOG's crown jewels.
For the WERI Advisory Council meeting, Day 3, FSM. Welcome back again to our meeting. Up next on the agenda, we have our professional development presented by Mr. Ken Rexall on Common Ground water storage, tank maintenance, and repair. But before we hand that over, I'll just go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Jensen if you'd like to say it.
You know, kind of slow on the mute switch. Thanks, Amanda. Yes, we're pleased to have Ken Reckdahl, who's also one of our alums and one of our partners now from AWWA to present a professional development session here. So I won't use any of his time. I'll turn it over directly to him and let him share what he's going to share about the wisdom and experience they've gained on tank maintenance and repair around the region. Ken?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Jensen. Should we come? Okay, great. Again, thank you everybody for sticking around. I think we were coming up on lunchtime over in the FSM. And so I hope I can entertain you a little bit while you're having your lunch, if that's what you're doing. Anyway, yeah, common ground, water storage tank maintenance and repair. Before I dig deep into this, again, I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank WERI, I want to thank GWA, AWWA, UOG, CNMI, YAP, and CHOOK. A little bit of emphasis on YAP and CHOOK. Was very fortunate to be there. Was it last year and the year before, and had an opportunity to really dig into and see their water systems. And many of the photos and discussions you'll see in this presentation come from my experience in YAP, CHOOK, CNMI, and Guam. Just to pause a little bit. Yeah, I'm with the AWWA Hawaii subsection. So we're AWWA, but we're a sort of a subsection under Hawaii. We're as active as we can be right now. Normally we have annual conferences and regular meetings. If you're not a member, I got to put a little plug in there. I encourage you to join our group. It's really easy. Jump online, awwa.org, and you can sign right up. If you join soon, you'll be able to participate in a conference that's going to be held, or a workshop, I should say, on December 3rd and 4th for small water systems. So our friends out there on the islands in FSM and CNMI, if you haven't already, it would be something very useful to chime in on and participate in. Things like water loss, I know is a very hot topic for all of us. Will be covered. Pressure zones, non-revenue water. So it'll be free to all of our members. So if you can, if you're interested, it's a 2-day workshop. Take the time to sign in, and we'll send you all the information you need to participate in that. Okay, enough of my advertising. We can move on to the next slide. Sorry, 1 second here. So just kind of an overcap. I'm going to recognize that not all of us are on the line, our engineers. There's a wide range of folks. So I'm going to try to tone down the technical aspects of this discussion, sort of stay to the high level. And I'll just play it by ear, see how things go. And if there's any questions on some of the technical aspects, I can chime in. I gave the same presentation last week on the CNMI module of this, and the feedback I got was great. I appreciate everyone for that. I think there's a little bit of interest in the future, and that's so I'm going to try to blast through the inspection part and focus in on the future. So just a real quick outline. I'll cover the history. I'll cover the challenges of bypassing. I'll cover inspections, and I'll cover what can be done moving on into the future. A lot of photos throughout this presentation you'll see here. This is one taken in Rota. It's a bolted steel tank, and I think it's the Ginalagan tank in the Sinapalau village of Rota. So we were pretty fortunate to inspect this tank for CUC back in 2015, I think. So, next slide. So history, common ground. So, as we can all see here, we're all islanders. We all live in islands. We all experience the same weather pattern. It's very similar, not same, but similar weather patterns: rain, typhoons, droughts. But we all also have a lot in common as far as our infrastructure goes. We have very similar tanks. A lot of our tanks were built around the same time. During the trust territories, a lot of infrastructure was put in. So a lot of our infrastructure looks the same there, built at the same time. Mainly, we have a lot of the same O&M challenges. Getting maintenance, getting someone out there to inspect your tank, getting getting the technical expertise, getting that parts you need. I always like to joke, out here, we're 2 weeks from everywhere. I can only imagine how far you must feel over in the FSM. Maybe you're 2 weeks in a day, I don't know. But our challenges are very similar, getting parts, getting expertise and sourcing what we need, and then getting all that implemented. So we have a lot of common ground, not just to mention the history we have, right? And I'd like to tap on that as I go through this presentation. So next slide. So why do we need these tanks? In the past, way back, we could dig a hole and we can get some fresh water right out of a shallow well. And that worked just well for generations. It worked very well, actually going up to the 50s and maybe even the 60s in some places into the 70s. In fact, when I was traveling and through Chuk, I saw some shallow wells still being used. So, those traditional ways of gathering water, our aquifers are mostly plentiful in many of the islands, and they supplied us with the water we need. However, with economies building up and industries building up, there's a need for more water storage. And so water tanks were put into water systems to provide that storage. Getting a little technical here, those tanks provide more than just storage. They provide a key element for the hydraulics of the water systems that are in place. Without the tank, your water pressures, you'd see a swing in them. They go up, they go down, depending on the demand and needs of the day. A good sized water tank, a properly sized water tank can buffer that demand. And so you're not seeing these swings in pressure. And so throughout my travels, I've seen it. Every island is the same. Every water system is the same. It's nothing new to the islands. It's very common everywhere. The hydraulics are such that you want to put your tank at the high point. So it will store your water and it'll give you a nice balanced pressure zone throughout your tank. So tanks are pretty important for that need. There's also other needs. Tanks provide storage for fire flow. We don't like to think about it very much, but having a million gallons or 500,000 gallons stored up in the hill somewhere is very useful in the event of a fire. We all dread the day or dread the issues where our water tanks run dry and heaven forbid that happens. So they also serve that need. Next slide. There's a history in still tanks. We have, I've seen the common welded steel tank. I've seen bolted steel tanks throughout, and they look very similar. This tank in particular you're seeing here is in, again, Chuk, I believe, at their treatment area. Even the colors are the same. I don't know why, but a lot of our tanks are that greenish lime green color. They've been changing since, but maybe that was the standard paint back in the day. But all of us have that black mold that you're seeing on the roof. That's very typical for many of the tanks throughout the islands. All of our steel tanks have very common challenges: the black mold, corrosion, cathodic protection, coating steel. So we all have similar infrastructure to that respect. These welded steel tanks, and they're good tanks. They're the right size, they're the right costs. If you look at them on a scale compared to other tanks, they perform well when they're maintained. The maintenance is not so much of a challenge, but there is a maintenance aspect to these tanks. And again, all the islands that I visited, and I'm sure throughout our area, we have these steel tanks. Many of them, I believe, were put in probably in the 60s. And one of them were built by a company, the Chicago Tanks. If you look at the plates, you'll see they're AWWA standard Chicago tanks. Many of them that I've seen, at least the older ones. So next slide. A little more on history. So I said the steel tanks kind of came into play in the 60s, plus or minus a couple of decades there. Beforehand, though, there was a lot of concrete tanks. So many of the islands have concrete tanks. The one you're looking at here is up in Saipan. These are the Isley tanks right by the airport. Huge tanks. They're still in use today. I can't tell you when these were built. I think they were probably built during maybe during the Japanese administrative times, maybe not. We certainly have tanks here in Guam that were built before World War II, concrete tanks. Very rigid steel, cast in place, thick-walled concrete tanks that are still performing today. I've seen them again in Saipan. I've seen them in Guam. I've also seen them in Chuk. where these tanks are still in use. They're long lasting. They're just really robust. They do what you need them to do. I will say a couple of comments though on these older concrete tanks. If there's upgrade needed, many times you'll have a challenge meeting certain codes, so you have to keep that in mind. Another challenge is, in some cases, they could be too large or too small, and to have this asset that's, you build it and you forget about it. It's going to last for you nearly forever, which is a good thing for maintenance, but it could be a challenge, or you can see challenges hydraulically if the zone the tank used to serve 50 years ago has grown or has shrinked. So some water agencies could see challenges with the size of these older concrete tanks. But nonetheless, they're still in use and they're out there in our systems today. Next slide. So moving on from the history, I'd like to talk about the challenges. So I said, we all need these tanks. They're present throughout our systems. They become integral to our water systems. They've been in place for years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. But they need maintenance and they need to be inspected. Many of the tanks that I've seen have never been inspected for the simple challenge that you can't turn them off. You can't bypass them. The reason is that the systems have grown, the tank was built there and the water system has grown. There's too many people relying on that water tank to serve them. And if you simply turn it off, you're turning off the water supply to hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people. And so it's not an easy thing to do. So bypassing these tanks is certainly a challenge. This is a tank here in Guam, some of our structural engineers out there. And you can see there's a little puddle of water behind him because this tank has been leaking for a while. It's very common throughout all of our islands. And again, to repair that tank would typically require you to shut it down, go in there, clean it out, repair it, which is a 1, 2, 3, 4 week, even longer process. So you need to find a way, a tool to keep your customers in service. We all know we can't just turn them off for that long. There are some options to going out there and repairing them from the outside, and I'll talk more about that later. But real repair really needs you to go into that tank, inspect it, and do the right thing. Other challenges with sort of bypassing these are the hydraulic needs. Many times you find any of the valves around the tank don't work or are frozen shut, which makes even shutting the tank down a challenge. Many agencies throughout our region have implemented sort of controlled levels. If they see the tank is leaking and they're sort of skeptical about the ability for the tank to hold water, agencies have lowered the water levels down temporarily or permanently, which is an interim approach, but it's definitely not a sustainable approach. So bypassing is certainly a challenge. Next slide. So some of the tools we've used for bypassing, it's nothing new, it's nothing fancy, very straightforward. There's pressure reducing sustaining valves. You could put out there, they're hydraulic valves. They don't run on power or nothing like that. If you're in a position where you have a tank and another tank that's above it, and you want to take this lower tank off service, you can install one of these valves sort of right smack in the middle or down below, and it'll regulate your water system pressure. So if you're in a position where you have higher zones that can serve your lower zones, putting in a pressure reducing sustaining valve is a useful approach. And it's a long-term approach too. You can use it again and again and again as your tanks need maintenance every so many years. This is a little schematic we did where we installed one of these valves in Saipan. And so now they can take this particular tank down, go to this valve and operate this valve. So routine maintenance becomes a lot easier. Let me just kind of back up. If you're going to go and work on bypassing your tanks, it's a very good practice to make your bypass more of a permanent tool rather than a short-term tool. That way, the maintenance of that tank can be regularly done. If it's a short-term, temporary thing, you're going to have to come back again and again and again. That same challenge is going to show itself. So if you're in a position, putting in these control valves is a good way to go. In some cases, if you're taking that higher tank offline and you want to keep that lower one online, a pumping system, which is usually already in place, can be done. There's a lot of technology now. Variable speed drives work very well for controlling the water pressures. So that could be implemented, and we've done that a few times here in Guam. I can move on to the next slide. I mentioned it. This is in Yap. This looked like it was a temporary tank that now is stuck around. But in some jurisdictions, you can put in these smaller 5, 10,000, 20,000 gallon tanks. Maybe in some areas that's not small, but these kind of quick bolted tanks, there's also fiberglass tanks that you can put where if you want to take your tank down, you can throw a small fiberglass tank or bolted tank together to serve that buffer or that sort of need. Certainly not going to fill the whole need of the tank, but it's an option. And we've seen it done. I think Saipan has done this quite successfully at a number of their tanks. Papago and Gualarai, for example, I think have done this. Just be aware of the hydraulic impacts of doing it. Also be aware that the foundation for these tanks is pretty important. You're still holding all that water on the ground. So you got to make sure that the ground is sound enough for that temporary tank if it's what you choose to do. Next slide. If you're fortunate enough and you have the space, you can simply just put a new tank in. Here in Guam, Waterworks has been fortunate enough to do that. I think Saipan also had this case. One of the challenges though with putting a new tank in is you have a lot of your water tanks are on the tops of hills or at high points in your water system. And you can imagine you put a tank at the top, it's not a lot of real estate to put another tank there. So real estate is a challenge. And of course, these tanks are at the high points with nice, pretty views. So that's also an issue. But if you're in a position, certainly just building a new tank, turning your old one off or doing what you need to do is certainly the most straightforward approach, which you really don't need me telling you that usually just presents itself. But it's definitely an option many jurisdictions have taken in the past. Next slide. So it's a little bit on the challenges of bypassing. I'm going to kind of try to breeze through this one here on the inspections. So you can do different kinds of inspections, different levels of inspections. The most straightforward is the exterior inspection. You don't have to take the tank offline. You can drive up, just bam, take a look at it. This particular tank, again, was in Yap. It's a welded tank. There's some of that traditional green you see there, some reds, and some sort of blooming rust spots there. I think you can easily assess, relatively easy, the appurtenances, the valves, the hold down bolts, the exterior coating. There's tools you can check the thickness of the steel going up. There's rovers you could put that climb the tank or tools you can do. So you can garner a lot of information from an exterior inspection. And I think a lot of jurisdictions rely on this in lieu of trying to shut that tank down. But just be aware that while you're only seeing the exterior, there's a lot of going on behind the scenes. One thing that we've found is the tank bottoms of these older steel tanks are usually very, very thin. Reason being is you don't need that much steel because that water is just sitting on ground, which is sitting on more ground. So it doesn't have to contain anything. It just has to form a surface. So a lot of times that plate at the bottom of your tank is pretty thin. And over the years, is susceptible to corrosion. So just be aware that there's a lot of things you may not be able to assess, certainly from your exterior inspections. Moving on, next slide. Interior inspections. If you can't take your tank down, there's ways you can still inspect the interior. There's access ports. You can go in there and take some photos. We've also done it where we've sent divers down. We've sterilized divers, sent them down with cameras. They were able to inspect ground coatings, things like that. If you're able to, you can bring the level of the tank down to inspect some of the coatings inside the tank. This is an example. I'm not going to call it out, but you can certainly see the challenges of this tank here. The center column collapsed on itself. The coating has started to deteriorate. Just a lot of challenges. But again, this tank was one that it wasn't easy to take offline. So they opted to run it at a lower level, but certainly repair and maintenance, it was screaming on this tank. So interior inspections can be done without taking the tank offline, but you still can't get the full gamut of what you really ought to see to thoroughly inspect the tank. Next slide. So one of the top inspections that's out there, it's an industry standard. It's called API 653. It was adopted from the American Petroleum Institute. In the water system, we like to think that, that we all have it made in the shade. We know what we're talking about. But a lot of our information comes from many other industries. One of them being the petroleum industry. They use steel tanks. They've got many more steel tanks than we do. They keep them all in place. You know, if they leak gas, they're more interested in that leaking than a tank leaking. You know, that's product, that's money. So they've developed a lot of standards for properly inspecting and maintenance and developing lifespans for these tanks. And our industry, the water industry, has adopted this for welded steel tanks. It's very useful. Some recommendations, you do it every 5 years for these particular tanks. You go in there and a certified NACE inspector will go in there and check the coatings, check the thicknesses, check out all the appurtenances and give you a really nice, robust report. I know Guam has done it, Saipan's done it, YAP has done it. You also get very useful information as far as the lifespan. They'll come back and they'll report and tell you how long this tank has based off of the amount of deterioration of the steel. Other things to keep in mind, you want to also consider NACE, National Association of Corrosion Engineers. They're certified inspectors to tell you how your coating is acted. It's one layer of defense for your tank's interior and exterior. Also be aware of the safety implications. These aren't regular areas where you should go in and out of. They're confined spaces, so just be aware of that. And when or if you do take your tanks offline, doing a quick lead-based paint testing is always good to know that information for the water agencies. Next slide. Lastly, you can do a full-blown structural inspection. Normally, you want to get in there and clean the interior tank out, take all, sometimes your girders and all your supports will be kind of rusted. If you take all that out, sandblast it, you'll be able to see a lot of information on the structural systems of your tank. This one in particular was a center column of a tank we inspected, and you take a look at the picture, you'll see that the supports there are starting to be eaten away. So you have a structural engineer go up there and you may find that it's just fine. You may find that if you just put a little plate on there, you can keep that tank going a lot longer. So a full-blown structural inspection by someone qualified can go a long, long way. And if they're done, they're typically done in tandem with an API inspection. Next slide. So going to the future. So I broke this in. There are some repairs you can do. Once you get your tank offline, you get your results, you'll probably find a whole series of repairs to be done. Some of those repairs can be labeled as minor, and they can be done relatively quickly and within the span of 1 to 2 weeks, maybe less. And they usually require weld repairs, plating of a little hole on the exterior of the tank, some minor coating repairs, some bolts, some appurtenances, replacements, things of that nature. Things that can be done, again, usually from the outside, sometimes from the inside, but are sort of minor. I'll explain what a major repair is in a second. Just some things to keep in mind, though, when you're doing repairs and you start welding things and you have coatings, that weld will tear that coating apart. So you've got to go back in there. You really should go back in there and repair those coatings if you're going to do any welding of your tanks, your steel tanks. Next slide. Major repairs. This is an example of a major repair. You can see the whole side of one whole side of the tank was cut out to get it parts in and out. In this particular tank, we replaced the whole floor. So it's definitely feasible. You go in there and you don't take that old floor out. What we did is we built it up 4 inches. So we put a little thin layer of concrete, put some more plates in there, all the columns, we picked all the columns up. We essentially picked the whole tank up by 4 inches. It was still beneficial, still cost effective, because you didn't have to replace anything else in the tank, maybe some repairs, but usually those floors was what we find as being the challenge. If you can't weld plates to keep the floor in place, you have to usually repair it. So an example of major repair would be a complete floor replacement, complete replacement of your steel girders up on top, and major coating repairs are kind of examples of major tank repairs. They're done, they can extend the life of your tank by 10, 20, 25 years. So something to consider. Next slide. Some future tanks, the industry has been moving towards these post-tension tanks. This is an example of one. You saw one a little earlier that Guam Water Works built. They last you forever. They're essentially maintenance-free when compared to the other tanks. And they're troopers. Certainly their capital is more than you would have for your common steel tank, and the mobilization aspect of it. But once you build these tanks, they're very robust and they're very they can last a long time. And the industry is actually moving towards towards these tanks in some areas. So tank replacement with concrete is something that's being done, what we're seeing being done a lot more frequently, particularly in Guam and up in the CNMI. Next slide. If you can't, if you opt to, you can simply remove the tank and upgrade your water system. I had mentioned earlier, if you have certain zones, in this case, there was a higher zone that was served by an elevated tank. The maintenance of that elevated tank was a challenge, costly, and the zone was pretty small. So the engineers and operators and owners opted to simply eliminate that elevated tank and let's serve this zone through a booster pump system. And again, booster pump systems have come a long way with advent of variable speed drives, things of that nature. And so this has been in place now for over 5 years. It's been working very well. And again, if your zone is small enough and you have another tank to pull from in that region, it's a good option. Usually for larger zones that have 10,000 plus people or that range, you really want to consider a tank. Serving it through a booster pump system does have its other challenges, but it's an option. Next slide. So let me just kind of pull all this together here. We have a lot in common, as I was mentioning, past, present, and future. I think there's a lot of opportunity for all of our islands to keep the dialogue as we have been, share information, share our successes, share our challenges, and the tank inspections, bypass needs, interior inspections. This is all information I've garnered from over the past 12 years working with all of you guys, and I hope to continue sharing this information. And I guess let me just kind of recap. I got my notes here. Some important aspects. So there's safety matters, confined space entry. Excuse me. There's the API's inspection, which is a very useful tool. There's NACE inspections for coating, structural inspections. Coating surface prep is important. Cathodic protection. I didn't hit on it too much, but a lot of our cathodic protection systems out here are the same. CorePro is a popular brand. I've seen it on the islands. Passive cathodic protection, active cathodic protection. I've seen them both. The passive ones have worked very well. This particular tank was in, again, in Chuk. They call it the pink apartment tank. And it had cathodic protection, and the interior of this tank was very, very nice. Little to no repair at all was needed to this tank, believe it or not. And I would attribute that to their routine cleaning of it and the cathodic protection system. And so lastly, also keep in mind tank disinfection. If you take your tanks offline, it's important to bring them back online, properly disinfected. There's 2 or 3 ways AWWA standards call out to do that. But it is a part of your potable water system. So tank disinfection is very, very important. And with that, I think that's our last slide there. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but there's my contact information. You can throw a question in the chat and I'll do my best to get to it. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
And one question, how much gonna cost the average? I mean, you know the cost, I mean, typical.
Okay. Oh, Dr. K, is a good question. Vanji asked me that exact same question last thing. So
yeah,
I'll put some numbers out there. So we replaced a tank in Saipan, a steel tank, a welded steel tank, was about $1.50 a gallon for that new tank. Appurtenances and all. I have the concrete tanks we've been seeing here on Guam have been in the range of about $3 to $4, maybe a little bit more dollars per gallon. So it's about double, maybe a little more than double the cost for that. So those are new and in place. Let me just throw out there though that the option to repair the tanks has gotten a lot of attention because you can get another 20, 30 years out of a steel tank through its repair. And in some cases, the repairs are almost as much as the replacement cost. But in other cases, and that's really a management decision to make that call. But in many cases, it's not. In many cases, you'll find those repairs are half or lower. And a lot of times the owners opt to just simply do the repair and get that additional 10, 20, 30 years of lifespan from those old steel tanks.
All right. All right, thanks. Yeah. I put 3 up.
But yeah, it's a good question, Dr. K. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
I guess Amanda or Dr. Jensen, I'll turn it back over. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much, Mr. Kim, for that great presentation again. As a reminder, if you have any questions, we still have a discussion section at the end of today's meeting. We encourage you to share your questions in the chat. There will be an open discussion after our next item of the agenda, so definitely an opportunity to get all of your questions and comments out there at the end of the meeting. So please definitely share your comments or questions in the chat. We'll go back to them at the end of the meeting. At this time, we're going to move into the facilitated discussion with US EPA Region 9, led by Captain Brian Bearden. While Michelle is going to set that up, I'm going to go ahead and just share a brief intermission screen while she sets up those who are joining us today. With that, Captain Bearden, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So just as a brief introduction, I'm Captain Brian Bearden with the U.S. Public Health Service. And real quick, the Public Health Service, despite the uniform, we're not a military service. We are a uniform service. We're under the Department of Health and Human Services. And the reason why I'm involved with this is because the PHS, as we call it, has been a part of the EPA, especially out here in the Pacific Islands, for ever since the EPA existed. In fact, the Public Health Service was the predecessor federal agency to the US EPA back in before the 1970s when the EPA was formed up. So that's a little bit about why I'm in a uniform here. And we have another PHS officer that I'll be introducing in a minute. But first, just a real quick introduction as to what this discussion will be about and how it came about. Back in August, when we held the micro conference for the AWWA, we had folks on from the FSM, and they were able to get on and give us a great presentation. And they asked a lot of questions, especially about the types of technical assistance that might be available for the FSM. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity between having US EPA on the phone and the University of Guam folks to talk about and find out a little bit more about what FSM is looking for in terms of that assistance. And at the time, the request was for help with water quality issues and laboratory issues especially. And we'll get into that in a minute here. But before I get into that, I just wanted to do a quick introduction of the folks from the US EPA that we have on the line, and then do a call out for other folks that will be participating in this discussion. So on the EPA side of things, I'd like to have each of you guys be ready to respond here, but we've got Mr. Carl Goldstein. He's the program officer for the CNMI, and he's been working with the Pacific Islands program for many, many years, much more than 30 years. Carl, are you on the line?
Yes, I am on the line. Thank you, Brian. Although
Great.
I'm actually, I do Guam now. Shireen.
Oh, sorry, Guam. Did I say CNMI?
Yeah. I have CNMI on the brain too.
I was thinking back because I was thinking about how many years Carl's been involved, and I believe he started out here with the CNMI back when I was still in junior high or maybe even elementary school. But Carl, you can tell them how many years you've been working in the Pacific. It's, what, is it close to 40 years, Carl?
It's TNTC. Too numerous to count.
Right.
But I was in Saipan, yeah, from 79 to 84. I lived there as an IPA.
And thanks, Carl. So, so leading right into the CNMI, then from the CNMI, we have the relatively new EPA CNMI program manager, Miss Shireen D'Souza. Shireen, are you on?
Hi, Brian and everyone. Yep, I'm on and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thanks, Shireen. And then from American Samoa, we have the American Samoa program manager from US EPA, and that's Commander Elena Vauli. She's another PHS officer like myself. And Elena, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Nice to see everyone.
Great. So that's our EPA team. And I know we had asked if there was any way, we tried to get some folks to participate potentially from the Department of the Interior and the State Department. Was anyone from DOI able to join us? Sounds like a no. And was anybody from the State Department available to join us? Another no, apparently. Okay. So with that said, we intend this to be an open discussion, and we really are hoping that the folks that are interested in this type of support are from the FSM are available on the line. So I'd like to open it up now to just see who we have on from the different utility departments of the FSM states. Maybe with Pohnpei first, since I think that's where the question came from originally. Is there anybody from the Pohnpei utility? I'm not hearing anything, but I hear something very quiet. I'm not sure if that's them. Anybody from any of the other FSM states that was the ones interested in the technical assistance discussion?
Hi, I'm Kind Canto from Chuk. I know there is a guy from Pohnpei EPA also with us, but I'm with the College of Micronesia, Chuk campus. But yes, we are interested in whatever you're going to discuss in assistance to our islands.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining. You said we have somebody on from Pohnpei EPA?
Yes, he's on.
Yes,
Who do we
Captain
have on?
Brian, we have Mr. Bradley Henry, I believe from Pohnpei.
Hey, Bradley, are you EPA? I see you in the chat there.
No, the one from EPA is Fermis Callium.
Hi. Thank you, Kind.
Okay.
I'm Fermin from Pohnpei EPA.
Okay. Well, is there anybody else that we haven't? Oh, hello.
Can you hear me? This is Anna again at EPA Region 9.
Oh, that's right. We have. Yeah, sorry, Anna. I did not recognize your name there. So we have Miss Anna Yin. She's from the EPA Region 9 Drinking Water Program, and she's also on the line to discuss topics as they come up. Is there anybody else from FSM that would like to, that is participating in terms of the utilities or the environmental agencies? Okay, if not.
Oh, there's Bradley.
Okay, hi, Bradley. So we wanted to reach out to you guys first and let you have the opening statement if possible, and to maybe explain what it is exactly that you would be interested in terms of technical assistance. Would you be able to speak to that, Bradley, or is there somebody else that would be better?
No, I'm good. It's just that the question you said was raised by PUC on the last meeting was from our manager for the water division, and he was interested in quality control for the water that we generated.
So let me ask you a question, Bradley. Does the PUC there in do you guys have a water quality laboratory? Do they have a laboratory that they use for the utility?
Well, we have a very simple one. We don't test that much. It's just coliform and what's that? Turbidity and chlorine. That's about what we have. I'm sorry the guy from water is not available to answer the questions.
No problem. So that type of work that you guys do with your laboratory, is that for drinking water, or is that for wastewater, or is that for both?
Actually, for what I was talking about before was for drinking water. Okay. I'm with the wastewater.
Okay. And do you have any laboratory capability for wastewater? Are you able to do BOD, TSS?
we had set up for COD and TSS and what else? But we don't have the technical person to do it for us. We have the lab set up, but we don't have a trained lab tech to do the testing for us at the moment.
Okay, so you have a laboratory space.
You know how to do that. Yes.
But no technician, no person that could do that yet. Okay.
Yes.
And I see a Furman there. How about Furman? How about with your situation?
Our lab is just to test the water quality and marine samples, not the wastewater like the sewer systems.
Right, so it's just like an environmental laboratory then, environmental water quality lab. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you guys run any drinking water samples with the environmental lab or not at all?
Yeah, we still do. We run the waters in our lab.
Okay. So then I guess the question would be, what is it that you guys are looking for then? Are you looking for personnel? Are you looking for training to set up lab personnel that can use that equipment?
Well, that would be an interesting prospect to get training for somebody to our lab test for us, you know.
I think at this point, I'd like to maybe open it up to the US EPA folks to just maybe step in, ask some questions of your own, maybe describe some of the existing and previous technical assistance programs that have been offered in the US API. That'd be Carl, Mr. Carl Goldstein or Shreen. I'm not sure who would like to speak up on that.
Well, I can start. We have the Freely Associated States Water Quality Certification program for the laboratories, primarily the EPA laboratories. And that's been in existence for about 12 years. All the water quality laboratories, the environmental water quality laboratories, such as Pohnpei and RMI, Chuk, Palau, Yap, they've all been certified to analyze drinking water and marine water samples. It's been a very successful program. That program is to be continued. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that's a problem right now. But at present, our intention is to continue that program. And that's the primary source of technical assistance for laboratories that we've been providing.
Thanks, Carl. And maybe you could speak a little bit to the funding source behind that program, and if there's any limitations in terms of what it can and cannot do if they were to expand that or ask to expand that.
The funding source is from DOI, Office of Insular Affairs. It's through their TAP program, TAP. I believe that stands for Technical Assistance Program. That's been well established in the FAS for quite a while. That program is available, as I think many folks know, for just about any wish list type item a FAS entity would be interested in. You can do studies, you can do construction. It all depends on your proposal of what it is you're interested in. That program is a yearly program. They invite applications sometime around now or before the end of the year, and then they either close them in March or they close them in May. With the pandemic, once again, I'm not sure what their schedule is, but there is a point of contact at OIA for that. That's Miriam Porter, Porter. So for example, if Pohnpei PUC is interested in modernizing their laboratory, say for ones that they're using, either water or wastewater, that would be the source for that funding. If and when the pandemic ends, if our contractor is out doing work for the EPA laboratories, I'm sure they can stop by and provide some assistance to the PUC. That is not a commitment, that's just an idea right now based on the previous conversation with Pohnpei PUC and what we may have available for our contractor. And any other alternatives that might be open to them, I suppose.
So, okay, thanks, Carl, for that update on what the DOI TAP grant is. You folks from FSM on the phone, are you all familiar with the DOI TAP grant program?
Well, I think we'll look into that. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. I have a follow-up question just on behalf of FSM to Carl or to anyone from EPA. The DOI TAP grant, is that usually a one-time grant that would just say pay for the purchase of equipment or the construction of a lab, or is it available for ongoing funding to operate a lab?
As far as I know, there don't seem to be many restrictions. Most of the FAS are usually successful in obtaining this grant, but within an FAS unity, they might have competition. So that's the tricky part. They don't say things like only for construction, only for supplies, only for this or only for that. It seems to be very multi-purpose.
Yeah, so when you say competition, you mean other folks within the FAS that are competing for that same grant, correct?
Yes, or within, say, Pohnpei, for example, there might be other agencies at Pohnpei that would be competing for a TAP grant.
Right. And I would say, just to follow up on my question, my comment would be that, you know, as a utility setting up a laboratory program, usually that's funded through the utilities rates and the utilities budget. So that's something that if you are looking for, the long-term planning should include the ability to cover that laboratory cost from the utilities revenue. And I know that can be a real challenge with the small utilities out there, but it's just something to be keeping in mind. It's always difficult to try to run an ongoing program that is based on an assumption that you'll get grant money continuously. So it's often best to just count on the grant money to do that initial setup or to pay for some sort of a technical assistance, similar to what EPA is doing with their lab certification program, where it's just a periodic technical assistance, but the lab itself is run through other sources. I'd like to hear now, maybe if there's any comments from the other EPA folks on the line, any ideas, Shireen or Commander Bauli?
Thanks, Brian. I'll just jump in quickly. This is Shireen D'Souza from EPA Region 9. And in addition to the opportunity that Carl just described through DOI's TAP grants, I'll also just note that EPA received funding from both DOI and the State Department to develop a engineer circuit rider that would serve all three FAST countries and would focus on water, wastewater, and solid waste needs. And so, like the lab certification program that Carl described, we've unfortunately experienced delays related to COVID, and it's not clear when we'll be able to put an engineer circuit rider out in the FAST to support the countries, but that will be a type of technical assistance that will become available at some point, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, that's an interesting development. That's one that I would have loved to have done myself personally, but Carl told me I couldn't.
Hi,
Hey,
this
Commander Bauli. Hi, Elena. Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to add some more clarifying information specifically about the FAS lab certification program. So in addition to certifying laboratories, the program also certifies technicians. And so as part of that certification process, there's a number of different materials and even remote technical assistance that's provided. On a biennial basis, the labs and the technicians are audited. And I wanted to ask Furman specifically, I know you're with Pohnpei EPA. My understanding is that they still have current certification through this program. So I wonder if you had any interaction with the folks at Pohnpei PUC and perhaps maybe share some of the information, knowledge you have about your participation in that program.
Thank you.
Furman, do you know if Pohnpei EPA is certified currently under the FAS lab certification program? Maybe it's not.
Hello, I'm not sure why Fermin is not talking, but I know that the Chuk EPA technicians were used to be trained by a lady from US EPA.
Yes.
He came over and trained them and certified them before they do the testings.
Yes, okay, that sounds consistent then with that being the program that we're talking about. And I apologize, Furman, if I put you on the spot. I thought you were with Pohnpei EPA. I might be getting mixed up with the representatives on the call. In any case, you know, it is definitely, Bradley, if that was something that, you know, at least an on-island local resource that you might want to reach out to, just as far as learning more specifics about the FAS lab certification program, that might be something to explore. Otherwise, as my colleague Carl explained, you know, it's important to have the infrastructure in place. I think because it's a lab and lab technician certification program, you have to have the lab in place. You have to have established mechanisms in order to acquire supplies. But again, we've been talking about a lot of different resources that could help supplement that effort. So I don't want to, you know, give the impression that it's an impossible task, but there's definitely steps along the way, and we're happy to share that information. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the information. We will definitely look into it.
So I'd like to just, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Bradley, just one quick question. You mentioned that there are currently no technicians trained. Were there previously technicians in place, or has the PUC lab never had trained technicians?
Actually, we just recently upgraded our wastewater treatment plant, and in the upgrade, we built a lab, a really nice lab, and 4 or 5 years, we've been sending our lab samples to Honolulu for testing. And we haven't got a technician here to actually like run the lab. So we want to train train a local lab technician like was suggested a while ago, which is a really good idea, and we will look into that. And at the moment, we don't have a lab technician running our lab.
Okay, understood. And congrats on building the new lab. That sounds like a exciting first step.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. I think having that infrastructure is one of the biggest steps to get there. Now you just have to find that person. I think we have some great ideas out here for how to get that to you. And I'd like to go to the University of Guam WERI folks to see any types of resources or ideas they may have, since they do have the ability to provide certain types of assistance. And I've received a private message during the call from Leroy Heights. Leroy or Dr. Jensen, is there anyone that would like to speak up on behalf of University of Guam on this subject?
So they will tell them that you're here. They're asking about your question.
Always takes me a while to navigate to my mute button here. Let me round up my subject matter experts here. I'm not sure who all is logged on right now. Is Dr. Kim on or Jennifer? But yeah, I'll be happy to field what I can. Let me see if Jennifer is. No, if she's not logged on already.
Dr. Kim looks like Dr. Kim is on.
Yeah, Dr. Kim, you want to take that, jump in here?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, so I'm Barry Kim. So right now, our WERI lab provide total 29 water quality services. So right now we provide 6 bacteria analysis and also some nitrogen-based ion and so about 10 metals. But I'm not sure where we had some experience transferring our tech to FSM or CNMI. So I'm still new at WERI, so I'm not sure about the background. But anyway, we have some kind of technique for water quality analysis. But if Dr. Jensen or Dr. K knows about some history, whether we have transferred the water quality.
Yeah. Kim, can you hear me? Yeah, Dr. Kim. Yeah, okay. A number of years ago, we did a training actually. We bought the equipment. I remember Gary Denton, and he was here. And then, we bought the equipment and we took it to Parapet. And actually, he, did the training, how to test this, how to test this. And I think they need, FSM, the way I see it. Even maybe Saipan is all right, but the FSM, they need the training and they need some equipment. And, that's basic. Yeah, I think training is good on the water quality, on testing the waste and drinking water. And if you need the equipment, you can ask to Dr. Jensen.
Thanks, Dr. K. Yeah, I just listening to this conversation, it brought to mind some of the projects that WERI has done before in the CNMI that I was involved with that involved training and developing capacity. So it seems like that's something that's right along the lines of what WERI can do. But funding wise, I'm not sure how that works. And I don't know, if it would compete with, say, a TAP grant in terms of overall ability to provide what's needed.
Yeah, but depends. You're talking about if it's a big, big equipment costs too much, that's a different. But basic stuff, basic equipment for the lab to a limit, that's possible.
Yeah, we can certainly move in that direction. You know, once a need is identified and the interest is there, you just move in one step at a time towards what you can do in the first year, what you can do in the second year. I've got Anthony across the hall. Looks like Jennifer just signed on, so I'm going to give Jennifer, but she doesn't know what we're going to ask her, so she's coming in cold. She's been doing lab stuff even while she's been dealing with customers while we've been talking. So I'll ask Captain Bearden to bring her up to speed on the conversation and tell her what we've signed her up to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Hey, John?
Yeah, sorry to bring you in late to this conversation, but I guess the question to you would be, you know, if there would be an opportunity for WERI to provide technical assistance to Pohnpei or other states within the FSM in terms of developing training programs, training lab technicians, getting that type of assistance up and running. It just as an idea, you know, we have folks from the US EPA on as well. They've talked about TAP grants from DOI as another way to get that done. They've talked about US EPA's existing program for the lab certification assistance out in the FAS. So maybe you could just tell us what you think of that feasibility for UOG WERI to assist in that type of operation.
Oh, yeah, we can definitely participate in that. There's not a problem as long as there's resources. You know, maybe some of us could go there and train them, or they could come here and visit us. So that's not a problem, really. I've worked with some people in FSM before, and we have contact, and we had that conference, the lab managers conference, and we did discuss about, you know, participating in this kind of situation where we share our resources. So I won't have a problem with that at all.
Could you maybe explain a little bit more about what's this lab managers conference you mentioned?
Oh, so during the Pacific Islands Environmental Conference, maybe a couple of years ago, so all the laboratory managers from the region, we got together, just sharing what we have. And I think one of the issues that the outer islands did have is technical abilities, or at least even instrumentation. So we did agree that if it's possible that we could maybe get together every now and then, or send someone to Pohnpei or Yap and train some people there. So it was discussed before, but it's just that we never were able to get back together again and coordinate.
Right. Okay. So thanks for reminding me. That was part of the PIEC, right? The Pacific Islands Environmental Conference. And that's always been a great opportunity for people to get together, at least on a biannual basis, or every 2 years, whatever. Is that biannual? Yeah. Maybe someone from US EPA could tell us what the plans are for the next PIEC. Just when is that scheduled and where?
I can speak to that. This is Elena. So because of the pandemic, lots of uncertainties are posing challenges for our scheduling. As far as we know, we hope that the next PIEC will take place out in the FAS somewhere, and hopefully 2021 spring, summertime. Again, it's a very big if, depending on what happens with the pandemic, but we're keeping our fingers crossed. Subject to change at any time.
Thanks for that update, Elena. Does anyone else have any suggestions along those lines? Oh, hey, Dr. Heitz, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. One thing I might suggest, and WERI lost Joe Rouse. He was a water quality guy, wastewater guy, and he did work out in FSM. You cannot figure out problems unless you go to FSM and talk to the people. This conference is great, and you can sit here and chat on the computer, and I know COVID has caused a lot of problems with traveling, but I would suggest when traveling starts again, that Dr. Kim and the lab director make a trip and visit each of the labs and talk to the people, find out what they need, see with their own eyes what's going on out there and what the problems are and what the strengths are. And then have them help the people in FSM write these grants that you're talking about to get equipment and to do training and possibly provide some of that training. This has all been done in the past. We had a huge training program for water quality 10, 15 years ago. We brought the people to Guam and had a long session of training and different things dealing with lab operations and those kind of things. And you don't necessarily have to do that again, but I think it's really important that WERI get out there and see what's going on. That's my comment.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion, and it's the obvious next step. We're just waiting for COVID to let up. I've got plenty of travel money that right now is either got to be reprogrammed or rescheduled. And given the interest in this, I would suggest we go ahead and write up some kind of plan or proposal. So we'll start small and move into larger scale as quickly as we can or as the need dictates. But this is a great suggestion. So let's move into open discussion now. I think we're already there.
Dr. Jensen?
And I'll let Amanda kind of control the switches here. But I can see there's a lot of people ready to contribute. So Paul, Ken, I'll let Amanda referee the discussion here, but I'll invite everybody to join in.
Sure. We can go ahead and continue on with the discussion that we're already having. I do want to bring attention to some of the questions that we had earlier on as well. For example, when it came to Dr. Lander's presentation earlier on about lessons learned in 20 years of field measurements of rainfall and stream flow in the tropical rainforest of Pohnpei Causeway, we did have a comment from Ms. Fandu Han, one of our really good friends from AWWA, HIWPS, and GWA. Her question was, if we don't have as many typhoons, what will that do to the amount of water in the island's water resources for drinking? So that's a question for Dr. Lander. And Dr. Temp has his hand up. Mr. C?
Yeah, so the typhoons certainly contribute. It's not the only thing that contributes to rainfall. Now, the good part is that big reduction in typhoons doesn't really occur until the global warming projections use the worst case scenarios, the RCP 8.5. Until it gets to the worst case scenario, there isn't really a big change. So the current distribution will remain roughly the same. And then when the global warming really kicks in, or at least in the models, when it goes to RCP 8.5, it's almost like you drop off a cliff. They suddenly get very highly impacted. On Guam, nobody's done the actual downscaling studies except for Guam. In the RCP 8.5, with 15% fewer typhoons, our rainy season rainfall drops off by 9%. The dry season rainfall goes up a little bit, and the rainy season rainfall, for a net annual rainfall change of 5% drier. Now remember, this is model simulation, but those are the kind of numbers. And RCP 8.5, and I asked the guy, and he said, well, in our model simulation, Guam gets drier in a warmer world. And I said, is that because fewer typhoons? And he goes, yes, of course. So the fewer typhoons does impact, it is the reason, it's the only reason, or at least the only reason on Guam why the rainy season rainfall gets about 5 to 10% less.
They account for less than 2% of our aquifer recharge.
Yeah, it's not a lot, but it's 5 to 10% of rainy season rainfall. So, and that's the model simulation. And it's also, in order to get those numbers, you got to push the models to the worst case scenario. Until the worst case scenario, not a lot changes. So don't worry about it yet. But just keep in mind that if anybody says anything about it, that's the projection. The projection, at least for Guam, is a little bit drier. So take that for what it's worth. Thanks.
I wanted to make a comment about laboratory certification assistance. I hope we're not overlooking Rudy Polino at Guam EPA. I know he's the one that certifies the labs, at least for Guam and some of our neighbor islands. And he should be one of the people involved in the efforts to get laboratory certified and operators certified on methods. I know the method that we used with him is we had to create a suitable, basically a laboratory operations manual with all the SOPs. And then we had to demonstrate that we put the staff through the standard methods, evaluations for each person to run a given test. And let me do a little bragging. I'm on the committee that writes standard methods for the examination of water and wastewater.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. See, Ken had his hand up.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Jensen. Just to continue on the discussion with laboratories, I just wanted to offer that there was the process implementations. When I was in YAP, I was fortunate to see their lab for their treatment plant. And one thing that caught my attention was that there was a lot of benefit that could be done to improving how they operate that treatment plant. And then they need some good hands-on lab folks to jar test and do all of those. So I think the discussion was largely on the compliance, but there's this whole other tool of process improvement and process upgrades and changes that, and that's, in my opinion, it's kind of low-hanging fruit. You can get a lot of benefit from it. So tying into what Dr. Height said, being on the ground, walking the site, taking a look at their labs, seeing what they got, digging through their files, I was able to see that they really have everything they need. It just needs to be kind of calibrated, and someone sort of guide them through some of these testing methods, and it can get a lot of benefit, I thought, to their process. So I want to just throw that out there, that there's the treatment process benefits to having a strong lab presence. That's all.
I have comments about that. For 2020, I already have a project for Coastal Island for installing rain gauge and stream gauges and and also provide the training. Also, because of some maintenance fear about water quality equipment, I already make some budget for simple water quality test for drinking water. So my project will provide this simple training, simple training courses and GIS information training course for Coastal Island, and next year maybe Pohnpei and Yap and Chuuk. This is for 1 year, 1 year, one island. This is my plan. But because of COVID pandemic, we cannot go anywhere. So this is a big problem. So we have already program. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Chris, you and I were scheduled to go to YAP, I believe, right? Or right when this thing happened. So.
Oh, I have to leave.
Hey, I don't know if I'm allowed to speak right now again, but I just wanted to follow up with, close out one of the topics of that previous discussion. And we talked about the DOI TAP grants. I just wanted to ask if there's anyone on this call right now who has a good idea of, who the FAS utilities could turn to for assistance with coming up with a grant proposal and working with that. Is that something they have to go do within the FSM, or is that something that, are there any federal resources available out there that can assist with coming up with a grant proposal and finishing that process up, I guess? Maybe
this is Carl. I would say each of the independent countries, that's been a challenge for them to develop a application, a well-written application. I don't know who they turn to internally to prepare such an application, but I don't believe there's a federal resource available. Like, I don't believe OIA helps them. I don't believe OIA has a resource for them. They might find a consultant to do it. That's about it. It's a challenge to write a good application and compete.
Thanks, Carl. And maybe that's something, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but maybe that's something that if you can get that circuit rider person up and running, maybe that's something that they can assist with once they're on the ground.
Yes, exactly. That's what one of the things a circuit rider could do, besides do a circuit rider business going around fixing lift stations and so forth.
My thought would be, do we just start with what we have the resources for? Start with the things that we can do and can accomplish using the resources we have, similar to piggybacking on some of the suggestions that Paul Kemp made, and bring a group together that can do that and identify what's doable and start there. Brian, you're free to kind of moderate the discussion here. We've kind of segued from your topic into our open discussion, and if there are other topics that people want to bring up, feel free. But let's stay on this one here until we run out the clock, or decide to move on to some other topic.
Yeah, I did not have anything else really to bring into that. I just wanted to make sure we closed out that topic of the TAP grant, because the TAP grants, of course, are a great source of funding, but they do take some work to put together. And just, I just wanted to also remind, as we're talking about this, that we do have that existing EPA lab certification program that is something else we can build off of. And that was all I really had to add. So if you guys want to take over the discussion from here and follow up with any of the previous topics before us.
Sure. Well, you've heard from our lab manager about the resources that we have and the interest, and you've heard a bit from Dr. Kim. I'd like to invite him to share some more thoughts. He's our faculty member that is our lab coordinator. Prior to that, Gary Denton kind of filled that role. People worked with him because he was the single biggest user amongst the researchers of the lab, and Dr. Kim has moved into the position that Dr. Denton vacated when he retired. So he's taken over that function. So he's the first member among the faculty that I turn to coordinate collaboration amongst the faculty or amongst the agencies that we work with. So with the risk of putting him on the spot here, I'll give him the microphone if he wants to suggest how we might move forward. Go ahead, Dr. Kim.
And Dr. Hyde provided good suggestions. So yeah, I will talk with Jennifer about our capability, and in the meantime, so yeah, I will talk with Dr. Jensen about our potential funding, and then maybe next year, if we can, then we can visit some island and then and check what they are doing, and then based on that information, I think we can build up what kind of training we can offer, and then what other funding sources we can find, and if possible, we can put together for FSM, and then we can make one proposal if possible.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Kim. Yeah, these kind of conversations are precisely what this meeting is for once a year, for us to share ideas and suggestions and needs with each other and talk about what we can do to contribute with the resources we have, and then what resources we might be able to pursue. So, yeah.
Dr. Johnson, I have a comment. During that lab managers meeting, we talked about maybe sharing resources as far as, for example, if we get a new instrument because we have a budget for it, and then if our existing instrument is still operational, I may want to suggest that maybe we could transfer. Is that possible to transfer our old equipment to the lab in, let's say, Gap, if they need it, so that they could use? Because I know one of the issues that they have was having instrumentation as well, or equipment.
Yeah. No, I think that's an excellent suggestion, because some of that equipment, it's perfectly good equipment, and has a lot of life left in it. So we might as well share resources. I don't know if Jennifer mentioned, but and we mentioned at those of you that attended the first meeting of this series, that we're going to be, well, we have plans to expand the lab. We're working on getting a new building, and part of getting that new building is putting a new lab in it with about twice the floor space, and then the attendant improvements in equipment and services that we can provide with that. So this is a propitious time for our lab. We're making plans for the lab anyway. So this is great. Did you want to say some more, Jennifer?
I think that's it.
Okay.
I was just offering that maybe if we have the instruments and we're not using it, so maybe another lab could use it.
No, we can work this into the plan, and in fact, we can probably even get on in-kind credit for matching funds or something like that, depending on the grant source. So that's a great suggestion. Yeah, Kind, I think he just put his hand up.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. That would be very nice, but we need to train the people first, or it will end up like the one having the lab, but without anybody to properly take care of the equipment as well as use them. So training of technicians first. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, well, I'm sure Dr. Kim has taken notes here, so we'll add that to the list. And then that's an obvious thing. Yeah, no good to set up a lab unless you got people that can run it.
Hi, this is Elena again from EPA. I also wanted just to sort of advance the discussion about visiting laboratories a bit, and to Mr. Kemp's point, which was really excellent about the standards and about the actual program itself. The so it's not an EPA lab certification program. It's a program that was modeled after the US EPA certification program, but understanding that the US EPA requirements don't necessarily apply in the FSM, it was tailored to model it. And so it's called the FAS lab certification program, and it's specific for water quality sampling of and analysis of drinking water and recreational waters or marine waters. And so specifically the method, I think, Mr. Kemp, check me if I'm wrong, 9223 CoAlert 18 for drinking water analyses, and then EnterAlert for the marine and recreational waters. So, I mean, it's very, you know, we tried to be thoughtful in the, you know, the simplest process and for not only acquiring samples, but something that we could train staff very easily to sustain over time. So if that helps you in sort of your exploration of visiting laboratories and maybe potentially considering donating supplies, we are, you know, the program currently is using the IDEX, CoAlert, and EnterAlert methods.
Well, that's very helpful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. And you know, Ken Rectal brought up a very good point too, that some of the work that the wastewater utility needs is not really that precise, I guess I would say. You don't need that certified laboratory. It's more of an operator function where you're just looking at settleable, the ability of that sludge to settle, and you're using a microscope to look at what type of ecology you have in your sludge. And that may be something that you want to separate out as a different function, right? Because you can train a different sort of technician to do that work versus drinking water work.
Yeah.
Let me just say that's the way we do it at GWA. We have the ability to train people to do operational testing as well as we have room in the lab to do certified testing as well, to train for certified testing. But as Brian just mentioned, one of the most critical points that we need to support is the operational lab testing. And we put in we built 2 new treatment plants, or rebuilt one and built one brand new one. And we put labs in both of them, and we put labs in the older ones as well. And the one that's now under construction is going to have a good lab. But those labs are all targeted towards running the plant. Our certified laboratory does the sampling and analysis for the NPDES reporting.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. We also have another comment in the chat from Bradley Henry. Can PUC make comments on the water quality?
Hello. Can everyone hear
Would
me?
you like to elaborate on your question?
Yeah, go ahead, Bradley.
Sorry, this is Lirensen. I'm with Bradley. I think we brought up the question during the AWWA conference in Guam in terms of water quality. We're representing the utility back home. We're familiar with all of the activities that WERI have done with the whole island of FSM. Specifically, the concern that we brought up during the AWW, it really regards to water quality that has to do with the utilities. And we were seeking some assistance in terms of the building capacity to all our operators, specifically on water quality. I even talked to the EPA folks if we can coincide these two things together between PUC and EPA, because this is something that we felt that we need to have when we're providing water to the community, to the end users, and we have this commitment that we want to provide a good water to the people. I think that's one of the things that we had in mind that we brought up during the conference. And in fact, we do have some contacts. We have some exchange emails between us and the EPA folks and the representative from AWWA in regards of what is the specific things. If you can recall what Dr. Leroy mentioned, that would be more appropriate. But I think with this COVID-19, this pandemic that causes it causes this, it will lengthen the procedures. I mean the setups. It would be really best if someone has this the skills to come to Thailand and specifically look at the needs. For instance, I can only speak on PUC because the water, I'm the one that's in charge for water, and what I've seen is that I need to build down more on our operators on, especially on water quality. That is mandated for a water provider to able to do surveillance on water quality. Pretty much we do have some water quality equipments, and to be serious, we want to know it's not only to operate the apparatus that we have, but the ability for us to able to collaborate. I think these are some of the most important things that we, as the utility, we need to know, not just to operate the equipment, but a way to monitor the equipment if the equipment is still in good shape, or do we need to calibrate it? So these are some of the things that we brought in mind. But I think the most appropriate way is, as Dr. Leroy mentioned, that someone that can visit us and see the actual things that we need to improve. And this is the general thing that we feel that we need assistance on. And to make a last suggestion on the OIA grant, I think, I mean, my own personal view, I think WERI will be more appropriate entity to assist whatever the FSM or the utilities on for the grant writing. I mean, somebody to put together the needs in terms of the funding that we will be able to need in the future. Thank you all.
Thanks, Thurston.
It looks like that's all the questions we have in the chat. I do want to share a comment from Ms. Vanji. Great session, Brian. Thank you for organizing and leading this discussion. This is very helpful and beneficial. But other than that, I don't see any other questions, and I hand it back over to you, Dr. Jensen.
Okay, thank you. I've just discovered that you can unmute yourself by holding down the space bar. So I'm in business now. Yeah, great session, everybody. And I want to thank everybody for their contributions. Before I wrap it up, though, I'd like to, we've got a few more minutes, and the value of these meetings is the discussion, the kind of discussion we're having. So if there's any remaining contributions that anybody has been waiting to contribute, I'd like to invite you to do it right now. Okay, I guess that's it. I'm getting better at navigating around the screen here. I want to see everybody's faces. Yeah, okay, well, again, thanks to everybody for coming. We've had a really great and productive discussion, so I'd like to invite you to follow up with us. Keep in touch with us by email and communicate with the WERI faculty and staff by email, and communicate with each other. I'd like to thank our experts from Global Learning and Engagement, Amanda and Michelle, for putting this together and skillfully facilitating it for us. I just don't know how we do this without them, and we do it very well with them. It's the next best thing that we can do while we're under the COVID's lockdown, and I think we've overcome a lot of the challenges. In fact, there are some advantages. So when we get back in the business of being able to fly again, we'll
Hi, Dr. Jensen, you're back on mute. So you cut off after talking about hopefully we get to travel soon.
okay, the space bar has a time limit. Okay, so I was just making the point that our expert assistance here at GLE has got us into a new technology that we can use to our advantage. It's no substitute for travel, and when we're able to travel again, we can do both. And I'm looking forward to. I expect that meetings in the future, even when we're having physical meetings, are going to be hybrid meetings where we'll be beaming the meeting into the rest of the audience that was unable to travel, and it'll leverage our meetings where we're all going to be trained, and we've all bought the equipment, the technology, so we might as well keep using it. So thanks to everybody for coming. I want to thank our guests and distinguished visitors and people that have joined us from agency heads and policymakers and around the region. And looking forward to continuing what we've started here. I think we've had a great discussion. We've got some great ideas. We've connected here with people meeting each other. I want to thank Brian for bringing our colleagues from US EPA into the discussion. And looking forward to working with everybody. It just keeps getting better and better. So thanks to everybody for coming, and stay safe and stay sane in this crazy environment we're living in. I never know how to end these. You know, in a real live meeting, we'd be having lunch now, and then we'd be visiting with each other, and we'd be talking to each other on the way out the door, and those are really valuable. In this kind of environment, you just all kind of look at each other on the screen and then hit the button and sign off. It doesn't seem very natural. But I guess it's
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for today's meeting.
See you Thursday.
We'll see you Thursday. As a reminder, it's our last meeting, and it's long part 2, starting at 9 a.m. We'll send out a reminder email, and of course, as Michelle had mentioned in the chat, we'll also be sharing PowerPoints as well from all the previous meetings. So we'll see everybody on our last day. We're hoping to see everyone again. So we'll see you then. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. That's how to do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent.
My cursor disappears.
Okay.
Ready to pull the plug?